Congratulations, Paige said, sliding a ring with one rusted key across Warren Vance's dining table. You're officially the queen of mosquitoes. The key stopped beside Mara's hand. On the parcel map, everyone else's inheritance had been colored in yellow pencil. Dean's farmhouse and hay fields filled the middle. Paige's road frontage ran in a clean rectangle along County Road 6. Russell's timber and equipment barn occupied the north end. Mara's 38 acres sagged along the bottom in blue. Marsh, someone had written across it. Nobody had wanted that piece. They had made this clear before, deciding Mara should have it. Dean leaned back in Warren's chair. It's still land. It's underwater, Mara said, not all of it. Only when it rains? Russell laughed into his coffee. Paige did not. She was watching Mara with the tight, expectant expression people wore when they had already decided what gratitude ought to look like. Mara touched the key. She remembered the last clear thing Warren had said to her. His fingers had locked around her wrist with startling strength, and he had whispered, "Don't let them choke it." At the time, she had thought he was confused. Now, 3 days after his funeral, everyone at the table seemed to be waiting for her to refuse the Marsh. The dining room still smelled like Warren's house, though Mara suspected it would not for long. Coffee, furniture polish, the menthol ointment he rubbed into his knees, a faint trace of the ham Paige had brought after the service and left in the refrigerator, as if placing a foil-covered dish counted as staying. His plaid cap hung from the peg by the back door. Mara had nearly moved it that morning. She had stopped herself because Dean had already begun saying "my house." "I'm just asking how this is equal," she said. Dean's gaze dropped to the map. At 34, he had mastered the family habit of looking thoughtful when he meant to wait someone out. It isn't about every acre being identical. No, I understand that. Some acres have a house and a mortgage. Warren paid that house off 12 years ago. Dean rubbed his jaw. There are expenses with a place like this. There are expenses with a swamp. Marsh, Paige corrected. Mara looked at her. Paige lifted one shoulder. That's what you called it 2 seconds ago. That's what the map calls it. Well, marsh sounds nicer than swamp. Russell set down his coffee. You could sell hunting access. People hunt ducks. Do you hunt ducks? No. Do you know anybody who does? I know people who own camouflage. That got a laugh, even from Mara, though hers escaped before she could stop it. Russell smiled at her like he had given her something. This was how the Vances survived ugly conversations. Somebody made a joke, everybody laughed, and the person getting hurt was expected to appreciate the rescue. Dean tapped the yellow shape surrounding the farmhouse. I'm taking on the main property because it needs somebody here full time. Mara looked at the pile of mail near his elbow. 3 envelopes had her handwriting on them. She had been paying Warren's electric bill from his checking account, ordering his prescriptions, scheduling the furnace service, and arguing with the satellite company for 14 months. Dean had spent one Saturday replacing 2 porch boards and had talked about it through Christmas. You live 40 minutes away, she said, for now, and I live 20, above a laundromat. Paige inhaled through her nose. Russell studied the bottom of his mug. Dean's face shifted a fraction. He knew he had said the quiet part too loudly. Mara's room above Sud's Spin had one slanted bedroom, a hot plate, and pipes that knocked whenever somebody downstairs ran the industrial washer. It was not impressive. It was also what she could afford on what the motel paid her to supervise laundry and cover the front desk whenever Denise disappeared for a cigarette. Dean softened his voice. I'm not insulting where you live. You said it like you were. I'm saying you don't have the setup to manage the house and fields, but I have the setup to manage standing water. Paige folded her hands. Her nails were a pale pink that made Mara conscious of the dirt beneath her own thumbnail. Nobody is trying to stick you with anything. The parcels were appraised by acreage, access, and general condition. We went around this for hours. They had gone around it without Mara. The first group message had arrived while she was bathing Warren after he spilled soup down the front of his pajamas. By the time she read it, Dean had volunteered for the farmhouse. Paige had claimed the road frontage, and Russell had said he needed the barn because he knew machinery. Russell sold restaurant equipment for a living. Mara had pointed that out once. He said machinery was machinery. What about the tractor? She asked. Russell's posture changed. What about it? The marsh has a lane. It has drainage ditches. There's an old pump shed. If I'm supposed to maintain the land, I'll need equipment. The tractor goes with the barn. Why? Because that's where it's kept. The refrigerator is kept in the house. Does it belong to the kitchen? Dean pinched the bridge of his nose. Mara, I'm asking, and I'm trying to keep this from turning into a fight. That almost made her laugh again. Dean always announced his opposition to fighting after arranging the room so he could win one. Outside, a truck hissed past on the wet county road. The kitchen clock clicked over to 2:17. Warren's clock had never ticked evenly. Every 5th or 6th second seemed louder, as though time occasionally stepped on a loose floorboard. Mara wrapped her fingers around the rusted key. She could refuse. Then what? The 4 parcels would remain entangled while everybody argued over taxes, repairs, and who had taken which ladder. Dean would call her unreasonable. Paige would use the phrase clean solution. Russell would offer another joke. Eventually Mara would give in, only with more people tired of her. She was tired of herself already. Does the key work? She asked. Russell glanced at Dean. That was answer enough. Dean said, It should. You tried it? We didn't have time to test every old lock on the property. You tested the barn. That has valuable equipment in it. Mara looked down at the blue parcel. A thin black line entered from the upper edge, widened into a kidney-shaped pond, then wandered east toward the neighboring Holt farm. Warren had drawn over part of it in pencil years ago. His marks were faint and crowded, little arrows and crosshatches no one had bothered to erase before making the copies. Don't let them choke it. She had heard stranger things from him near the end. Once, at 3 a.m, he had insisted his brother was waiting in the tool shed, though his brother had been dead since 1998. Another time, he accused the toaster of stealing his mail. The disease did not arrive like darkness. It came in torn patches. Warren could forget the year and still tell Mara exactly when rain would reach them by the ache in his left thumb. His grip on her wrist that night had left 4 pale crescents. What happens to his personal things? Mara asked. Dean's eyes went toward the plaid cap by the door. We'll sort them. When? Once I get moved in. You're moving in before we sort them? It makes more sense than leaving the place empty. Paige leaned toward Mara. If there's something specific you want, say so. There were too many specific things. Warren's chipped green cereal bowl, the wool blanket that smelled permanently of wood smoke, the pocket knife he used to peel apples in one long strip, his boots by the mudroom, bowed around the shape of his feet. Asking for them one by one would make her sound greedy. Asking for all of them would make her sound unwell. The notebooks from the pump shed, she said. Dean frowned. What notebooks? The maintenance books. If they're still there, they go with the Marsh. Fine. He agreed too quickly because he thought she had asked for trash. Paige pulled the agreement closer and turned it so Mara could reach the signature line. We can still get this filed before the end of the week. There it was. Not cruelty exactly. Momentum. Her family's most reliable weapon. Mara picked up Warren's pen from the table. It had teeth marks near the cap. Her hand hovered over the paper, long enough for Russell to clear his throat. Look, he said, unexpectedly gentle. Land is land, Mayor. Plenty of people don't get anything. He meant it kindly. That made it worse. Mara signed. Dean exhaled. Paige immediately gathered the pages into a neat stack. Russell reached for the coffee pot and discovered it was empty. Well, he said, who killed this? No one answered. Mara put the rusted key in her coat pocket and stood. Dean said her name, perhaps intending to offer something now that the difficult part was over, but she went through the kitchen before he found it. The mudroom light had burned out again. She knew the location of the spare bulbs without thinking. Top cabinet, behind the flea spray. For a moment her hand rose toward the door. Then she let it fall. Dean had the house. Dean could change the bulb. She took Warren's cap from the peg and tucked it inside her coat. Rain had softened the yard to brown paste. Mara crossed it in the low black shoes she had worn to the funeral because her boots were still in the bed of her pickup. Warren's old hound had died years ago, but she caught herself waiting for the jingle of tags behind her. The silence felt newly official. Her pickup started on the second try, which counted as cooperation. She drove past the hayfields Dean had inherited, winter flat and silver under the afternoon sky. Warren's fence followed the road for half a mile, patched with 3 generations of wire. At the far corner, the clean pasture gave way to brambles. Mara slowed. A warped wooden sign leaned against a cedar post. Lower parcel. The chain across the lane had sunk into weeds. Beyond it, 2 muddy tracks disappeared beneath arching sumac. She had not been down there in at least 6 years. That surprised her. The marsh had existed less than 2 miles from Warren's kitchen, but care had narrowed her world. Pharmacy, grocery store, clinic, laundry, home. There had always been a meal to make or a sheet to change before dark. She pulled onto the shoulder and sat with the engine running. The practical thing was to call a land agent, take photographs, find out whether anyone bought wet ground for duck hunting, frog appreciation, or whatever Russell imagined people did in camouflage. If she sold quickly, she might pay off the pickup and put a deposit on an apartment whose floor did not vibrate during the spin cycle. Instead, she put on her boots. The chain was not locked. The rusted key in her pocket belonged to something farther in. Mara left the truck beside the road and started walking. The lane was worse than she remembered. Rainwater filled the tire ruts, and thorny vines caught her coat. Halfway down, she found the remains of a fence under a fallen maple. One strand of wire hummed when she stepped over it. The land opened without warning. Gray water shone between acres of dead reeds. Cattails leaned in the same direction, flattened by winter wind. A pond lay at the center, wider than it appeared on the map, its surface dark and restless beneath the rain. On the far side stood the pump shed, listing so badly it looked embarrassed. Mara stopped at the edge. She had expected ugliness. She had not expected the place to feel watchful. Water moved somewhere beneath the reeds with a low, secret sound, not flowing freely, pressing. She followed the bank until mud swallowed her right boot to the ankle. When she yanked it out, the marsh made a rude sucking noise. "Good," she muttered. "We understand each other." The shed door wore a red-brown padlock. Warren's key resisted, then turned with a gritty snap. Inside, the smell of damp wood and old oil closed around her. A rusted pump occupied one wall. Hand tools hung above a narrow bench, their outlines cleaner than the boards behind them. In the corner, beneath a sheet of corrugated metal, sat 3 black notebooks swollen by moisture. Mara reached for the top one. A truck engine sounded beyond the reeds. She straightened, notebook in hand, as a man in a brown work jacket came along the eastern bank from the direction of Holt Farm. He moved fast, stepping over washouts as if he knew exactly where the ground would hold. When he saw Mara, relief crossed his face before suspicion replaced it. "You're Warren's granddaughter," he said. "Mara," he nodded once. "Gabriel Holt." She knew the name, though not the man. The Holts owned the vegetable fields beyond the tree line. Warren used to complain that Gabriel's father could break an anvil with a rubber hammer. Gabriel looked past her toward the pond. "I heard they'd settled the parcels," he said. "I need to know what you're planning to do with the outlet." Mara glanced at the black water, then at the ruined pump. "I inherited it about an hour ago." His jaw tightened. Rain ran from his hair onto his collar. "That's a problem," he said, "because our farm needs this water now." Mara stared at him. "That sounds inconvenient." Gabriel blinked, apparently uncertain whether she was joking. She wasn't sure either. "It's more than inconvenient," he said. "The lower pond is down 3 feet. The ditch from here hasn't carried a steady flow since October. You have a pond. We have a hole with ambitions." That surprised a laugh out of her. Gabriel almost smiled, then remembered he was upset. He came closer to the shed, boots leaving clear prints in the mud. He was older than Mara had first guessed, perhaps 35, with a pale scar crossing one eyebrow and the stiff-backed posture of a man who lifted things before considering whether he ought to. Rain darkened his jacket at the shoulders. "Did Warren never talk to you about the outlet?" he asked. "He talked about a lot of things. I mean, recently. Recently he sometimes thought his toaster was stealing from him." Gabriel looked down. The urgency in him eased a little, making room for embarrassment. "I heard he'd gotten bad," he said. Everybody heard. Mara hated how sharp it came out. Gabriel accepted it without defending himself, which left her nowhere to put the next blow. He pointed beyond the pond. "The outlet's on the east bank. Would you come look at it?" "Why?" "Because it's yours." That was the first useful answer anyone had given her all day. Mara tucked the notebook under her coat. "Lead the way." The path around the pond was not really a path. Gabriel moved through the reeds with practiced confidence, stepping on patches of flattened grass and raised roots. Mara followed until her left foot slid off a muddy bank. He caught her elbow before she went down. "I had it," she said. "Of course. You can let go. You'd be surprised how many people say that while actively falling." His hand disappeared at once. He did not offer it again when they crossed the next washout, though he slowed enough for her to see where he placed his boots. The outlet lay behind a wall of brown cattails. At first, Mara saw only water and sticks. Then the shape resolved into a low wooden structure braced with stone. 2 square posts rose from the bank, joined by a crosspiece silvered by weather. A rusted wheel sat on top. Beneath it, boards held back the pond, or were supposed to. Water seeped around the sides in thin, muddy threads. Branches, dead grass, plastic feed twine, and several years' worth of leaves had gathered against the opening. The narrow channel beyond was nearly dry. Gabriel crouched and pulled a handful of grass from the jam. The water underneath made a brief gulping sound. "Stop," Mara said. He looked over his shoulder. "You're touching my outlet. I'm removing 6 blades of grass. You asked what I planned to do with it, not whether you could do it for me." Gabriel slowly opened his hand. The wet grass dropped beside his boot. Fair enough. His calm annoyed her more than an argument would have. Mara stepped closer to the structure. Warren's warning returned in his thin night voice. "Don't let them choke it." She had pictured something emotional then, breath, fear, the invisible thing closing around his mind, not sticks pressed against wood. "What happens if that wheel turns?" she asked. "If it turns, the gate lifts, and the pond drains. Some of it. Depends how high you raise it. Where does the water go?" "Down this channel, under the boundary culvert, into our north ditch. From there, we can divert it toward the irrigation pond, or let it keep moving into the lower field. We Holt Farm." I gathered that. Gabriel stood and wiped his hand on his jeans. "Your grandfather and my father built most of this gate in '92. The original one was older. They maintained the channel together." Mara looked at the wood. "Warren built this?" "He replaced it. Twice, probably. I helped with the last set of braces." "When?" 7 or 8 years ago. She had been coming to Warren's every week then. He had never mentioned Gabriel. Perhaps he had. Warren told long stories with so many names that Mara sometimes let them pass through her while she washed dishes. Gabriel gripped the wheel and tested it without putting his weight behind it. Metal squealed, but nothing moved. "The screws rusted," he said. "Even if we cleared the debris, we'd have to work the gate loose. Maybe replace the lower boards." "How long? With the right tools?" "A day to get flow. Longer to do it properly." "Do you have the right tools?" "Some. And the tractor?" "A tractor isn't coming down this bank until it dries." Russell's cheerful ownership of Warren's equipment flashed through her mind. She pushed it away. "How long has your farm used this water?" "As long as I've been alive." "Did you pay Warren?" Gabriel's mouth tightened. "Not exactly." "What does not exactly mean?" "It means our families had an arrangement." Every poor arrangement in the world, Mara thought, was described as an arrangement by the person benefiting from it. "What did you give him?" "Labor, diesel. We kept the lower channel open and helped with the banks after storms. My father repaired the pump when it was still running." "And lately?" The question landed. Gabriel looked toward the nearly dry channel. "Lately, we haven't kept up our side as well as we should have." "Why not?" "My father got sick. Warren got sick. Nora and I were keeping the farm going, and this," he gestured at the clogged gate, "always seemed like something that could wait another week. So it waited years. Not years. The flow only stopped last fall, but you stopped maintaining it before that." "Yes." The plain admission disarmed her. Dean would have spent 10 minutes rearranging the sentence until neglect sounded like weather. Mara crouched beside the bank. The wooden edge gave slightly under her fingers. She could see where one brace had pulled loose from the stone. "If I open it, do I lose all the water?" "No." "You answered too fast." "Because I know the system. And I don't." Gabriel breathed out through his nose. "You inherited a marsh, not a bomb. We can raise the gate 6 inches, watch the level, and adjust it." "We?" He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the moment he understood that being poor, muddy, and unprepared did not make her temporary. "You," he said, "if you want." Rain ticked against the cattails. Somewhere in the pond, something heavy slipped from the bank with a splash. Mara rose. "I'm not opening anything today. We don't need much." "You said you need it now." "I said the farm needs it now. That doesn't mean I expect you to start turning a seized wheel in the rain." It sounded a little like that. "I came to find out who had the parcel. And somehow you found out an hour after I did. Dean called me." The marsh seemed to go still around her. "Why?" Gabriel hesitated. It was not a guilty hesitation. It was worse, the pause of a person deciding how much humiliation someone else could stand. "Tell me." He asked if I wanted to buy it. Mara looked back across the pond toward the shed. The black notebook beneath her coat pressed against her ribs. "When did he call?" "This morning, before I signed." Gabriel said nothing. Of course he had called before she signed. Dean had known the Holts used the water, and still sat at the dining table describing her parcel as standing water. He had known enough to find a buyer, but not enough to test the key. "What did you offer?" she asked. "I didn't." "Why not?" "Because Dean didn't own it." "That has not stopped Dean from making plans before." "No, it hasn't." There was history in the answer, but Mara was too angry to chase it. Gabriel bent to pick up the clump of grass he had dropped. He tossed it farther from the water, apparently unwilling to leave even 6 blades where they might wash back in. "I would make you an offer," he said. "There it is. I'm being honest. You waited almost 15 minutes. I can come back and try it dishonest if you prefer." Mara folded her arms. "How much?" "Without walking the boundaries and seeing the tax assessment, I'd be guessing." "Guess." He named a number. It was more money than Mara had ever held at once, and less than Dean's used truck had cost. Enough to clear her own pickup loan, cover a move, and leave a small cushion. Not enough to buy any other piece of land in the county, she laughed once. Gabriel's face hardened. "It's wet ground with no county road access of its own. It has access through Warren's Lane, through Dean's Lane now. There's an easement, but that doesn't make it convenient. The shed is failing, the gate needs work, and 1/3 of the boundary fence is down. You've really thought about this. I farm next to it. You need its water." "I do." "That seems valuable. To me. Not to most buyers." Mara heard Paige's voice. "Marsh sounds nicer than swamp." She heard Russell telling her people owned camouflage. Most of all, she heard Dean assuring her it was still land while arranging to turn her refusal into a sale. "How much would you have offered Dean?" she asked. "The same?" She watched his face. Gabriel corrected himself. "Near the same." Meaning more, meaning he would have negotiated from a different position. Because he has a house? Because he doesn't look like he needs the money? The answer struck cleanly. Mara appreciated it only after she finished hating him for it. "Thank you for explaining how I look. You told me to be honest. You can be honest and still be a jerk. My sister says that almost daily." "Nora? You know her?" "No. Warren mentioned her. That was a lie, or close enough to one." Mara remembered the name from Warren's notes and scattered complaints, nothing more. She wanted Gabriel to wonder what else Warren had told her. It worked. His eyes moved to the notebook under her coat. Mara pulled it tighter against herself. "I'll contact you after I understand what I own. We're planting onions next week. Then I hope it rains." That's not much of a plan. Neither is arriving at a funeral property with a low offer and a thirsty farm. His expression closed. For a second, Mara thought he would argue. Instead, he nodded toward the bank behind her. "Step left when you go back. The ground on your right is hollow." She looked down. Water trembled in a narrow crack beside her boot. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He started along the dry channel toward the boundary, then stopped. "Your grandfather never gave us water for free," he said without turning. "People like to tell it that way because he was old and stubborn and it makes a nicer story. But he knew exactly what he was doing. He shut the gate on my father once for 3 weeks because we skipped clearing the south ditch." "What happened?" "My father cleared it." "And then?" "Warren made him clear this side too." A smile tugged at Mara despite herself. "That sounds like him?" "Yes," Gabriel said. "It does." He left through the reeds. Mara waited until the sound of his boots faded before returning to the shed. She sat on the narrow bench, rain whispering against the metal roof, and opened the swollen notebook. The first pages were filled with dates, measurements, and cramped remarks in Warren's slanted handwriting. She recognized the way he made his sevens, each one crossed hard enough to dent the paper beneath it. April 14th, North Bank soft, Holt brought stone, May 2nd, gate up 4 inches, lower beans dry, May 19th, shut gate. H hasn't cleared ditch like promised. Beside the June entries, Warren had drawn the same line Mara had seen on the parcel map. Only here, it branched and curved across both properties, like the veins on the back of his hand. She turned another page. Near the bottom, beneath a rainfall total, he had written one sentence and boxed it twice. Water has to have somewhere to go. Mara sat listening to the pond push against the clogged gate. For the first time that day, the marsh did not feel like what her family had left her. It felt like something they had failed to understand. Mara stayed until the rain found a hole in the shed roof and began dripping onto the open notebook. She moved it, then discovered a second drip. The roof was less a roof than a collection of leaks that had agreed to stand near one another. "All right," she said. "Message received." She wrapped the 3 notebooks in Warren's cap, tucked the bundle beneath her coat, and locked the shed. The key turned more easily the second time. On the walk back, she kept looking toward the eastern reeds, though Gabriel did not reappear. Her pickup's heater blew cold air until she reached the county road. Mud dried in pale scales on her jeans. By the time she pulled behind Sud's Spin, the laundromat's blue sign had begun to flicker against the evening. The back stairs shook under her boots. The upstairs hallway smelled of detergent, and the cabbage Mr. Pritchard cooked every Sunday, regardless of what day it was. Mara let herself into her room and set the notebooks on her tiny kitchen table. The table had 2 chairs, though no 2 people had ever eaten there. She removed Warren's cap. Moisture had darkened the bill, and a loose strand of gray hair clung to the inside band. Mara brushed it free, then stopped with it, caught against her fingertip. There was no good place to put one strand of a dead man's hair. Throwing it away felt brutal. Saving it felt worse. She finally tucked it back into the cap and hung the cap on the chair. Her phone buzzed. Dean's name lit the screen. Mara let it ring while she filled the kettle. It stopped, then immediately started again. On the 3rd call, she answered. "Is the house on fire?" "What?" "No." "Then you've called enough. I wanted to see how it went." She switched on the burner. "How what went?" "Down at the parcel." The small pause before Parcel told her he had almost said, "Marsh." "You knew I went?" "I saw your truck." "And you decided to report me to myself?" Dean sighed. She could picture him standing in Warren's kitchen, one hip against the counter, pressing his thumb between his eyebrows. Gabriel called. "Of course he did. He said you seemed upset. He offered to buy the land you told him to buy before I owned it. That's not exactly what happened." "Which word is wrong?" "I called him to let him know the parcel might be available." "It wasn't. It could have been." "You said you didn't want it." "I said it was underwater. You were clearly unhappy." "So you helped?" "Yes, actually." Mara looked at the notebooks. Water had curled the black covers upward at the corners. "When were you planning to tell me the Holtz used the pond? I assumed you knew." "You assumed I knew, but Gabriel assumed I didn't. Gabriel doesn't know what we've talked about. That makes 2 of us." Dean was silent. The kettle began to mutter. Pipes knocked beneath the floor as a washer entered its final cycle. "Mara," he said at last, "I wasn't trying to cheat you." She closed her eyes. That was not a sentence innocent people reached for first. "I didn't say cheat. You're acting like I hid something valuable. The marsh is only useful to the Holtz because it sits uphill from them. That doesn't turn it into lakefront property. No one said it did. He made a fair offer. He admitted he'd have offered you more." Another silence, shorter this time. Gabriel likes to stir things up. He mostly seemed to like water. His family has always treated that whole lower end like it belongs to them. Funny, mine treated it like it didn't belong to anybody until I signed. Dean's voice lost its careful softness. "What do you want me to say? That I should have taken the swamp and given you the house? I want you to stop pretending every choice you made for yourself was somehow for me." The burner clicked beneath the kettle. Mara expected Dean to answer hard. Instead, when he spoke, the anger had gone out of him. "I couldn't do what you did with Grandpa," he said. "All right? I know that." She opened her eyes. He had never said it before. Not during the nights she called asking him to sit with Warren for 2 hours. Not after the clinic visits. Not while he stood at the funeral greeting people who told him what a good grandson he had been. For one dangerous second, her throat loosened. Then Dean added, "But that doesn't mean I owe you the entire estate." The second passed. "I have to work," Mara said. "It's Sunday. Some of us don't inherit our workplace." She ended the call before he could decide whether that was fair. The kettle screamed until she shut it off. Mara made instant soup and spread the first notebook beneath the lamp. Warren's handwriting changed from year to year. Older entries marched neatly between blue lines. The later ones climbed margins, repeated dates, and occasionally stopped in the middle of a word. The system emerged slowly. The marsh collected water from several springs and from rain washing off the Vance fields. The pond held the water behind the wooden gate. During dry weather, Warren opened the gate in measured amounts. During wet weather, the Holts kept their ditches clear, so overflow could move across a low field south of their barns. The pump had not pushed water toward Holt Farm, as Mara first assumed. It had been used during unusually wet seasons to move water from a lower pocket back into the pond. Warren had last recorded running it 6 years earlier. She turned a page and found a grocery list between flow measurements. Coffee, oatmeal, light bulbs, call Mara. No reason followed her name. She touched the ink with one finger. At midnight, the table began vibrating as the laundromat's largest machine spun a load of work uniforms. Warren's maps trembled under her hands, water lines shifting in the yellow light. She read until 2. By 8 the next morning, Mara was at the hardware store, buying rubber gloves, pruning shears, a bow saw, and 2 rolls of bright orange marking tape. The total made her put back the hip waders. She already owned boots. Boots leaked only if water got above them, and she intended to be smarter than water. At 8:45, water proved smarter. She stepped into what looked like 6 inches and sank to her shin. Cold flooded her right boot. Mara stood in the feeder channel, with both arms out, waiting for the mud to decide whether it wanted the rest of her. A crow called from the trees. "Don't," she told it. The crow called again. She spent the morning on the north edge of the pond, working from Warren's sketch. The channel there was almost invisible beneath mats of dead grass. She marked its supposed path with orange tape, cut back blackberry canes, and dragged out branches one at a time. Most of what blocked the water was ordinary: leaves, sticks, a torn fertilizer sack, a white plastic lawn chair without legs. She found an unopened beer can half buried in silt, rinsed it, and set it beside her tools. At 11, she had cleared 12 feet. The channel remained dry. Her shoulders ached, and the cold inside her boot had warmed to the unpleasant temperature of her own foot. She sat on an overturned bucket beside the shed and opened Warren's notebook. North feeder forks at ash stump. Mara looked around. There were at least 7 ash stumps. She tried the nearest one and found nothing but roots. At the second, she uncovered a nest of field mice that sent her backward with a noise she would later deny making. At the third, the ground collapsed beneath her hand and released a bubble that smelled like rotten eggs. By the 5th stump, she was calling Warren names under her breath. Cryptic old man. Couldn't write left. Couldn't draw an arrow like a normal human being. That one's an elm. Mara spun. A woman stood 10 yards behind her, holding a red metal thermos. She was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in canvas overalls with one knee patched in green fabric. Her dark hair had been cut short enough that the rain could not do much to it. "Nora Holt?" Mara asked. "Unfortunately. Do Holts always enter from the reeds? We don't have road access on this side. You could call." "I don't have your number." Nora lifted the thermos. "Gabriel said you were muddy and angry. I brought coffee for the one I could fix." Mara looked at her wet boot. "He left out cold. I can't fix that without making this introduction strange. It's already a little strange." "Fair." Nora came closer but stopped before reaching Mara's tools. She did not touch anything. That alone distinguished her from her brother. She poured coffee into the thermos lid and held it out. Mara accepted it carefully. "Did Gabriel send you to improve the offer?" "No. Gabriel doesn't send me anywhere. He suggests things, and then I wait until he regrets suggesting them." The coffee was strong enough to make Mara's eyes widen. Nora noticed. Our father believed weak coffee encouraged moral failure. Did it? No, but strong coffee encouraged heartburn. Mara drank again anyway. Nora nodded toward the orange flags. "You found the north feeder. I found where the notebook says it is. That's different. I'm beginning to understand that. The fork's over there." Nora pointed to a stump near the water, one Mara had dismissed because it stood too far west. Warren called it the ash stump after the ash fell. That growth came up from the roots later. It looks like a bush. Warren wasn't big on updating names. Mara walked to it. Behind a tangle of reeds, she found a shallow depression curving toward the pond. "How do you know?" "I cleared it with him." "When?" 5 years ago. Maybe 6. That would have been near the beginning of Warren's decline, when he still drove himself into town and became furious if Mara asked where he had been. "Why did it stop?" Mara asked. Nora's humor faded. "My father's kidneys failed. Gabriel and I got busy. Warren stopped calling us when things needed doing. He called me." "About this?" "No." Nora looked at the clogged feeder. "Maybe he didn't want you to see how much he was losing." The thought went under Mara's ribs. She set down the coffee and cut into the reeds at the fork. Nora watched until Mara's shears caught on a woody stem. "May I?" Nora asked. Mara handed them over. Nora showed her how to cut low without driving the blade into mud. Together they pulled a woven mat of roots from the channel. It came free with a wet tearing sound. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a thread of clear water appeared between the grasses. It ran around Mara's boot, followed the channel she had spent all morning uncovering, and slipped into the pond. Nora smiled, but did not celebrate as if they had done more than they had. "About a cup a minute," she said. Mara watched the small current disturb the dark surface. "It's moving." "It is." The marsh answered with a quiet trickle, unimpressive and undeniable. Mara crouched beside it, cold, sore, and one hardware store receipt poorer. For the first time since she signed her name, something on the blue parcel was working, because she had put her hands on it. Mara followed the thread of water with her eyes, until it disappeared beneath the pond's wind-rippled surface. "How many more of these are there?" "Feeders?" Nora asked. "3 that matter. Maybe 4 if the west spring hasn't shifted." "Springs shift? Water goes where it can." That's what Warren wrote. Nora glanced at the open notebook on the bucket. "He wrote a lot of things. You've seen these?" "Not those books. I saw him write in them, usually right after yelling a number at somebody and expecting them to remember it." Mara turned to the channel. The clear trickle had already begun loosening silt from the bottom. "If we clear all the feeders, how much does the pond rise?" "Depends on the springs. Depends on rain." That is the answer everybody gives when they don't know. It's also the answer farmers give when the real answer is weather. Nora rinsed the shears and held them out. Mara took them. "Gabriel gave me a number for the land," she said. Nora's hand remained extended for a moment after the shears left it. "Did he?" "You know he did. I knew he planned to." "Was it your number too?" "No." Mara waited. Nora finally sat on the edge of the overturned bucket, leaving Mara the better, flatter side. "I told him offering to buy the parcel on the day you got it was a bad idea. But not buying it. We need control of the water. At least you say control. You want me to call it stewardship? I want you not to make it pretty." Nora rubbed a streak of mud from the thermos lid. "We're in trouble." The words were quiet enough that the marsh almost took them. Mara looked across the eastern reeds toward the unseen farm. From Warren's road, Holt Farm always appeared orderly. Long green rows in summer, white barns, a red tractor moving slowly under open sky. It was the kind of place people photographed for calendars because photographs did not show bills. How much trouble? "Our irrigation pond is low enough that the intake sucks air by noon. We lost most of the late beans last year. The onions covered their seed and not much else. We postponed replacing a cooler because we needed the money for diesel. Then the cooler failed during harvest. Gabriel said, 'You're planting onions next week.' We are. Why plant if you can't water them?" "Because not planting guarantees the same result." Nora said it without self-pity. That made it harder to dismiss. Mara cut another clump of reeds and laid it above the bank. "So, you thought I'd take the money. Gabriel did. And you?" "I thought you might. Most people would." "Because I live above a laundromat?" Nora's gaze lifted. "He told you that?" "No. He said I look like I need money. He has a gift." "For what?" "Making facts sound like insults." Despite herself, Mara smiled. Nora picked up a branch and broke it into shorter lengths. For what it's worth, he probably meant the offer to help. Then he and Dean should start a charity. That bad? They both want me to be grateful before they finish taking my temperature. Nora's laugh was brief and rough. "That sounds like Gabriel. You defend him in an interesting way. I love him. I don't advertise him." They worked another 20 minutes without speaking. Nora showed Mara how to stack debris lengthwise, away from the current, so the next heavy rain would not wash it back. She knew the marsh, but not possessively. When she reached for Mara's saw, she asked first. The second feeder was broader and worse. Alder roots crossed it like knuckled fingers. They cleared the upper end, where water shimmered beneath leaves, but stopped when Nora found a bank that had begun to cave inward. "If we pull that root mass, the side could go," she said. "Can we brace it? With stone and woven branches. Warren used old fence rails once. Are they still here? If the marsh didn't eat them." Mara wrote stone, branches, rails on the back of the hardware receipt. Nora watched. "You're making a list. I like knowing why I'm broke. I can bring stone. For free? For water? There isn't any agreement about water. No, there isn't. The distinction stood between them, clean and useful. Mara folded the receipt and put it in her pocket. You can bring me a list of what you normally did here. Labor, materials, dates. Not what you remember Warren asking when things were easy. What the system actually needs. Nora's expression sharpened. You're considering keeping it. I already have it. You know what I mean. Mara did. She looked toward the shed, which tilted a little more each time she saw it. I'm considering not deciding while everybody is certain I'll decide wrong. That's reasonable. You sound disappointed. I'm trying not to sound hopeful. Nora opened the thermos again. This time she poured coffee for both of them, drinking hers from a dented metal cup stored beneath the handle. At noon, she produced 2 ham sandwiches from her jacket pocket. They were flattened into the exact shape of the pockets. Do Holtz carry full meals in their clothing? Mara asked. Only for formal visits. They ate beside the pond. The bread was damp at the edges, and the mustard had soaked through, but Mara had skipped breakfast and would have eaten the wrapper. Nora pointed with her sandwich toward the far bank. See that line where the reeds change color? Mara squinted. Maybe. That's the old high water mark. We want the pond below that in spring, above the middle notch on the gate by July. Why below in spring? Room for storms. If it's too full, runoff goes around the gate and cuts the banks. If it's too low, the peat dries, shrinks, and lets more water escape. So, I can't just keep the water, not without losing some of the thing that holds it. And I can't just release it, not without emptying the pond faster than the springs fill it. Mara chewed slowly. Gabriel made turning the wheel sound simple. Turning the wheel is simple. Knowing when to stop is the farm. The words settled into her with an uncomfortable weight. She had spent one morning cutting reeds and felt triumphant over a cup of water a minute. Warren's entries covered decades. What happens if I ruin it? She asked. Nora did not rush to reassure her. The land gets wetter in the wrong places and drier in the wrong places. Our ditch stays empty. Dean's lower hayfield might flood after a hard storm. Mara glanced north, though the hayfield was hidden by brush. Would that be terrible? For the hay, yes. I meant morally. Nora studied her, then bit into her sandwich. Ask me after I meet Dean. An engine growled beyond the reeds. Mara expected Gabriel on foot. Instead, an old green utility vehicle pushed through the Holt side path, bouncing over roots. Gabriel sat behind the wheel with a shovel, 2 5-gallon buckets, and the expression of a man who had found a meeting being held without him. He stopped near the boundary and climbed out. Nora. Gabriel. You said you were checking the north fence. I checked it on my way. You brought lunch. I get hungry near fences. Gabriel looked at Mara's tools, the orange tape, and the cleared feeder. The trickle had strengthened enough to make a narrow ribbon through the silt. You opened the spring, he said. Mara opened it, Nora replied. I was speaking to Mara, and yet somehow I answered. Mara brushed crumbs from her jeans. Do you two need the shed? No, they said together. Gabriel pulled off his work gloves. The Westfield pump quit this morning. Nora's humor vanished. Belt, shaft. Can Jonas machine it? If we bring him the old one. He says 2 weeks. Mara looked between them. What does that mean? Gabriel's face remained turned toward Nora. It means we can only irrigate from the lower pond with 1 pump, and that one overheats. Nora stared into her cup. How long? An hour at a time. The urgency from the day before no longer looked like impatience. It looked tired. Gabriel noticed Mara noticing and seemed to resent the exposure. You shouldn't be clearing this alone, he said. I'm not. Nora has work. So do I, Nora said, on our farm. I remember where I live. Mara stood. She didn't come to trick me into opening the gate. I didn't say she did. You didn't have to. You arrived with your jaw first. Nora covered a cough that might have been a laugh. Gabriel looked at the cleared channel. It won't matter if the outlet stays shut. Your sister says opening it now could lower the pond faster than the springs fill it. His gaze moved to Nora. She lifted her cup. She asked. And I answered, Mara said. That's apparently how talking works. Gabriel walked to the pond's edge and crouched. He dipped 2 fingers into the flow, then examined the water as though it had personally disappointed him. It's stronger than last spring, he admitted. Could there be enough to release some without dropping the level? Mara asked. Not from one feeder. What if we clear the others? Maybe. The gate still needs repair. Could you repair it? Yes. For what? Gabriel straightened. Access to the water. How much access? The same flow Warren gave us. And what did you give him? We already went through this. No. You said labor and diesel. Nora is making me a list. Nora is what? Nora finished her coffee. Making a list. Gabriel's stare held a full sibling argument compressed into 3 seconds. Mara stepped between him and the pond, not because he threatened her, but because she needed him to understand the direction of the conversation. I'm not selling today, she said. His mouth flattened. I'm probably not selling tomorrow either. If that's the only reason you're here, take your buckets and go. What are you asking for? I don't know yet. Then how am I supposed to agree? You're not. You're supposed to wait. The words seemed physically difficult for him. Mara looked down at the small current entering the pond. Warren didn't give you water because you asked louder. He gave it when your side of the system worked. Gabriel glanced at the notebook. She could almost see him recognizing Warren's voice inside her words. We need the water before you learn everything he knew, he said. I know. It was the first time Mara admitted the size of the problem without using anger to make herself taller. Gabriel's shoulders eased, though his expression did not. What do you need? He asked. Mara pointed toward the damaged second feeder. Stone. Fence rails, if you have them. And somebody who knows how to brace a bank without making it worse. Nora raised her hand. Gabriel looked from his sister to Mara, then back to the pond. All right, he said. But we keep track of every hour and every gallon of diesel. Good. You'll keep track too? I kept Warren alive on 7 prescriptions and a grocery budget. I can count your buckets. For the first time, Gabriel smiled without trying to stop it. Then a sharp crack sounded from the second feeder. The loosened bank folded inward, taking half the orange tape with it. Mud surged across the channel and swallowed the new trickle. The 3 of them stared. Nora set down her cup. Put stone at the top of the list. Mara pulled the wet receipt from her pocket and uncapped her pen. Already there, she said. Gabriel moved first. Don't step in it, he said, grabbing the shovel from the utility vehicle. Mara had already stepped toward the collapsed bank. Why? Because the ground underneath is moving. As if to prove him right, a second section slumped with a wet sigh. Brown water rolled over itself and carried a clump of grass into the pond. Nora seized Mara's orange tape and tied it between 2 alder branches. Stay above this line. You're tying off my land now? I'm keeping you from disappearing into it. You can invoice me. Gabriel drove the shovel into the firmer bank and began cutting a shallow groove around the collapse. What are you doing? Mara asked, giving the spring somewhere else to go. Won't that erode too? If we leave it, this is temporary. Mara picked up her own shovel. Gabriel shook his head. Start higher. If we both put weight here, we'll widen the break. She moved upslope, probing before each step. Beneath the dead grass, she found the thin current Nora had shown her. Together, they scraped a curved path around the damaged section. Water gathered in the groove, hesitated at a root, then slipped past. Nora braced the outer edge with branches. We need stone before dark. I'll get it, Gabriel said. How? The small trailer. That axle complains on pavement. It complains everywhere. It likes attention. Mara cleared mud from the end of her shovel. There's rock by Warren's barn. Both Holtz looked at her. What? Gabriel leaned on the shovel. Does it belong to you? It belonged to Warren. That wasn't the question. The answer irritated her because he was right. Anything near the barn now belonged to Russell, including things Russell had not known existed yesterday. I'll call him, Russell answered cheerfully, as though the inheritance meeting had left no grit behind. Mayor, how's paradise? The north feeder bank collapsed. A pause. Should I know what that means? It means I need stone. There's a pile behind the equipment barn. Oh, that. Can I use it? I guess. How much? A trailer load. Russell made a low sound. That's drainage rock. I know. I might need it. For what? Barn stuff. What barn stuff uses drainage rock? I haven't had a chance to go through everything yet. Mara looked at Gabriel, who was studying the trees with great discipline. Nora made no attempt to hide her expression. The bank is moving now, Mara said. Warren kept that stone for repairs. Did he write your name on it? He didn't write yours on it either. It goes with the barn, same as the tractor. Why does everything useful go with the barn? Russell's friendliness cooled. We all agreed. No. You three agreed, then gave me a pen. You signed. There was no good answer to that. It was the sentence they would return to whenever fairness became inconvenient. Mara pressed her thumb against the phone case until it hurt. Can I buy a load from you? The question silenced him. She could hear a television in the background and the soft metallic click of a drink can opening. You don't have to buy it, Russell said, offended now that she had made the transaction plain. Take some. Just don't clean me out. Thank you. See? That wasn't hard. Mara ended the call. Nora handed her the thermos without comment. Gabriel took the utility vehicle back through the reeds while Mara drove around to Warren's barn. The farmhouse looked different with Dean's truck parked nose out beside the porch. Not changed exactly. Claimed. Russell was inside the barn opening cabinets. He had arranged Warren's hand tools into piles on the floor. Wrenches, hammers, chains, electrical parts. A roll of blue painter's tape sat beside him. What's the tape for? Mara asked. Marking what I'm keeping? All of it is what you're keeping. Not necessarily. I might sell some. He said it lightly, still crouched over a box of sockets. Mara looked toward the tractor. Warren had babied that machine for 23 years, washing mud from the tires before putting it away. A white card hung from the steering wheel, with a number written on it. You're selling the tractor? Maybe. You said you needed the barn because you understood machinery. I understand what it's worth. You've had it one day. And it needs a transmission seal, 2 hoses, and probably a new starter before winter. Am I supposed to pour money into it because Grandpa liked the color? Mara's anger reached for the easiest shape, then failed to hold it. Russell had a loan on his condo and a sales job that rose and fell with restaurant openings. He was not wrong that the tractor cost money. He was only very quick to turn Warren into inventory. The stone, she said. Out back, take what you need. A pair of long-handled loppers rested against the wall. Mara recognized them from the Marsh shed years ago. Those should go with my parcel. Russell glanced over. How do you know? Red tape on the grip. Warren marked the Marsh tools. Red. So, they belong in the Marsh. Russell picked them up and examined the tape as though it had appeared to inconvenience him personally. If I give you every tool with red paint, are we going to do this with nails next? I'm asking for the loppers. He handed them over. There. Family cooperation. Mara took them without thanking him. Outside, Gabriel waited beside the trailer while she loaded stone. He did not ask what happened in the barn. He simply chose the larger rocks and stacked them over the axle so the trailer would ride level. On the third trip to the pile, Mara said, He's selling the tractor. Gabriel lifted another stone. It's his. You sound like Dean. I'm stating the problem. That's what Dean does before explaining why the problem helps him. Gabriel set the rock down in the trailer. Do you want the tractor? I want him to care that Warren did. That isn't the same thing. Mara grabbed a stone too heavy for her and immediately regretted it. Gabriel took the other side without comment. Together, they carried it to the trailer. No, she said when they lowered it. It isn't. By late afternoon, they had built a rough stone toe along the collapsed bank. Nora wove alder branches between short stakes, creating a low wall to hold soil in place. Mara packed mud behind it with her boots, while Gabriel brought more rock by bucket. He did not take over, even when she worked slowly. He corrected her twice, argued with Nora 3 times, and apologized once after splashing mud across Mara's face. You don't sound sorry, she said. I'm conserving sincerity. For what? Something I actually regret. Nora, knee-deep in the channel, said, He's had the same supply since 2018. The repaired section looked ugly when they finished. Stone showed at uneven angles. Woven branches bulged from the bank. But when Nora pulled aside the temporary diversion, water returned to the feeder and stayed within its new edge. Mara crouched beside the flow. It clouded brown for a minute, then cleared. How long will that hold? Gabriel rolled one shoulder. If we did it right, years. And if we didn't, we'll know when it falls in. Comforting. He washed his hands in a bucket rather than in the feeder. That small act pleased her more than it should have. Nora retrieved a folded sheet of paper from the utility vehicle, the list. It was written in block letters, with columns for task, hours, fuel, and materials. Clear north and west feeders. Cut south overflow twice yearly. Inspect gate boards monthly during use. Remove storm debris. Mow access above bank. stone as needed. At the bottom, Nora had added, "Do not turn gate without checking downstream ditch." Mara read it twice. This is more work than Gabriel made it sound. Gabriel thought you'd sell. He did not deny it. "What did Warren pay for all this?" Mara asked. "He didn't," Gabriel said. "Our farm received the water. We maintained the route. And diesel. We split it when the pump ran. Repairs? Whoever caused the damage paid. Otherwise, half." Mara looked at the gate across the pond. "You're behind." "Yes," Nora said. Gabriel's head turned toward her. "We are," she repeated. The honesty passed through him like something sour. Then he nodded. Mara set the list on the notebook. "If I keep the land, the old arrangement isn't enough." "What do you want?" Gabriel asked. "Money when water reaches your farm." His expression tightened. "We're offering labor and materials to restore a system your farm needs. That benefits your land, too." "Yes, which is why I'm not asking you to pay for everything." Nora watched them without intervening. Mara continued. "You track your hours and fuel. I track mine and anything I buy. We get the feeders working, repair the gate, and see what the pond can safely release. If water reaches your irrigation pond, you pay a seasonal fee. How much?" "I don't know yet." Gabriel gave a humorless laugh. "You keep saying that. Because I've owned the place for one day. And we plant next week. I'm not changing the weather to make you comfortable. No, you're learning on our growing season." The words struck. Mara folded the list carefully before answering. "Then you can buy water somewhere else. There is nowhere else, which is why the land isn't worth what you offered." Nora looked down, hiding a smile. Gabriel paced once along the bank. "We need a number before we put more work in." "Fine. Give me your last 3 years of crop sales from the fields this water serves." His head snapped toward her. "No. Then I'll guess like you guessed what my land was worth. That's private. So is how much money I need." Nora stood and brushed mud from her overalls. "We can show her the acreage and yields without showing every farm account." Gabriel stared at his sister. "She needs a way to price the water," Nora said. "And we need her not to pull a number from the sky." Mara added, "I don't want so much your farm can't pay it. A dead farm won't need water." That changed him, not dramatically. His jaw loosened, and for the first time since meeting her, the suspicion in his eyes gave way to calculation that included her rather than working around her. 3 years of acreage and yield," he said. "Only the fields tied to this system, and what you spent maintaining the marsh before Warren got sick." Nora nodded. "That's fair." Gabriel looked at the repaired feeder, then held out his muddy hand. Mara looked at it. "This isn't a sale," she said. "No. It isn't permission to open the gate whenever you want. No. And I make the final decision on my side." His hand remained between them. "As long as you check what happens on ours. Water has to have somewhere to go." Mara clasped his hand. His palm was rough, warm, and filthy. "All right," she said. "Show me where it goes." Gabriel released her hand and pointed toward the utility vehicle. "Get in. Is that how you invite everybody onto your farm?" "I can bow if it helps." "It might." Nora climbed behind the wheel. "Don't encourage him. His beau is upsetting." Gabriel took the passenger side, leaving Mara the narrow bench and back beside the buckets. The vehicle lurched forward before she found a handhold. They followed a track through reeds taller than Mara's shoulders. The marsh narrowed near the boundary, its thick grasses giving way to red osier and young willow. A concrete pipe passed beneath a raised strip of ground. Gabriel called over the engine. "That's the culvert. Everything released at your gate has to pass through there." Mara twisted to look as they crossed. The channel entering the pipe was choked with leaves. The one leaving it was dry enough for grass to grow down the middle. "Has to work harder than that," she said. Nora glanced back. "Now you see why I admitted we were behind." The whole side of the system opened into a shallow ditch that curved between fields. Its banks had been mowed recently, but clumps of old vegetation remained in the bottom. Narrow wooden dividers stood at intervals, each capable of sending water into a different branch. Gabriel tapped one as they passed. "North Field." "That gate sticks." Everything sticks. Water systems are mostly things that stick, and people swearing at them. Finally, something I'm qualified for. Nora laughed and steered around a hole. Beyond the ditch, the farm rose in long bands of dark soil. Workers had already marked straight rows with the planter, though nothing green showed yet. The fields looked enormous to Mara until she noticed how many ended in patches of pale, crusted ground. The irrigation pond lay behind the main barn. Gabriel's description had been generous. The water sat 15 feet below the top of the bank, a dull green oval surrounded by exposed mud. A black intake pipe hung crookedly near the surface. The old pump beside it shivered on a concrete pad, making a metallic knock every few seconds. Nora shut off the utility vehicle. The pump's bad rhythm filled the silence. "You run that 1 hour at a time?" Mara asked. 45 minutes if it's hot," Gabriel said. "Then we shut it down before the housing cracks." "What happens if it cracks?" "We buy a pump we can't afford." "What happens if you don't?" "We irrigate with positive thinking." Mara walked to the edge. Hundreds of small tracks marked the mud below, but she could not tell what had made them. The water smelled warm and faintly sour. "How full is it supposed to be?" Gabriel pointed to a dark stain high on the bank. There. The distance between the stain and the current level made the problem visible in a way his urgency had not. "How much comes from the marsh?" "In a normal year, enough to keep the intake covered through early summer," Nora said. "We use the well too, but it's shallow. Run it hard and the water turns rusty." Gabriel picked up a stone and threw it toward the pond. It landed in mud, short of the water. "Last August," he said, "we ran 600 feet of temporary line to the south well. Lost pressure at the far field, burned out a motor, and saved maybe a quarter of the beans." Mara watched him wipe his hand on his jeans. He had probably thrown the stone to demonstrate the low level. It had also given him something to do while saying, "failed." Nora led them into a small office attached to the packing barn. The room held a metal desk, 2 filing cabinets, a calendar turned to the correct month, and a coffee maker stained brown around the burner. An adding machine occupied the center of the desk with the dignity of a religious object. Nora opened a drawer and removed 3 green ledgers. "Yield by field," she said. "Acreage, planting dates, harvest weight." We crossed out the buyer names. Gabriel remained by the door. "You didn't have to do this today," Mara said. "Yes, we did," he replied. "If we wait until you trust us, we miss planting." "That's not trust." "No, it's necessity. Sometimes they look alike at first." Mara opened the oldest ledger. The entries were neat, though different hands alternated. Nora printed in narrow capital letters. Gabriel's numbers leaned forward impatiently. The lower fields produced well when the marsh flow held. In the most recent year, yields dropped sharply after June. A note beside the bean total read, "Water interrupted, July 11th. Another line recorded $612 in emergency pipe and fittings. She turned pages while Nora made coffee. "Where's your father's handwriting?" Mara asked. Nora nodded toward the first ledger. "Early pages. Before dialysis took most of his strength." "Izzy, he died 2 winters ago." "I'm sorry, so are we." The answer was not cold. It was simply complete. Gabriel looked out the small window toward the pond. Mara wondered if people had told him he was a good son at the funeral. She wondered whether he had believed them. Nora placed a mug beside her. This coffee was only slightly less dangerous than the thermos batch. Mara read the numbers twice, wrote down acreage, and did not copy anything else. The Holts watched her see the size of their problem. The offer for her land had been less than the gross value of 1 decent harvest from the fields the water supported. "You knew exactly what the water was worth," she said. Gabriel turned from the window. "We knew what crops sell for. That isn't the same as what we keep. It's still more than you offered. We offered what the acreage would sell for on its own. It isn't on its own." "It's connected to this?" "Yes." He did not retreat from it. He also did not apologize. Mara closed the ledger. "I'm not setting a fee until we know what flow we can restore. That could take weeks. Then help faster." Nora hid her smile behind her mug. The days that followed arranged themselves around water. Mara worked at the motel from 3 in the afternoon until 11, slept badly above the machines, and reached the marsh by 7 each morning. Gabriel and Nora came when the farm released them, sometimes together, more often separately. They cleared the west feeder, rebuilt a soft section of bank, and hauled deadfall away from the gate. Mara learned that Nora sang old country songs under her breath when the work became repetitive. Gabriel counted aloud while tightening bolts and started over if anyone interrupted him. Both Holts argued with tools as though expecting an answer. The marsh marked Mara in return. Black scratches crossed her forearms. Mosquitoes found the strip of skin between her gloves and sleeves. A broken fence wire sliced her palm deeply enough that Denise noticed the bandage when Mara reached for a stack of motel towels. "You get into a fight with a rosebush?" Denise asked. "Fence? Did you win?" "Too early to tell." Denise was 56, smoked in all weather, and could identify every motel linen stain without bringing it close to her face. She took Mara's hand and turned it toward the fluorescent light. "That's red. Blood tends to be. Around the cut. Smart mouth. You clean it?" "Yes." "With what?" "Water." Denise stared. "And soap." "When?" "Recently. Recently is what men say when I ask if they changed the lobby trash." She sent Mara to the first aid cabinet, poured antiseptic over the cut, and ignored Mara's language. "You miss another shift? Tell me before the towels form a government," Denise said. "I missed one. You traded one," Denise remembers. Mara flexed her stinging hand. "I'll be here. You always are. That's not the compliment you think it is." The sentence stayed with Mara through the evening. At the marsh the next morning, Gabriel had already removed the rusted wheel from the gate. He sat on an overturned bucket, working penetrating oil into the screw threads. "You started without me. I removed one nut. There are 4 on the ground. 3 were emotionally prepared." Mara set down her coffee. "Does Nora know you're funny?" She refuses to encourage it. The handrail beside the gate had rotted through. Gabriel had brought cedar boards to replace it, charging only the sawmill cost on Nora's list. Mara measured while he cut. When she tried to hold a board with her bandaged hand, he took it from her. "I can hold wood. You can also drip into the pond. Doesn't make it useful." Denise said the same thing with more profanity. Denise sounds sensible. Mara braced the board with her boot instead. By afternoon, the new rail stood firm. The screw turned. Nora had walked the entire downstream ditch, clearing branches and marking 2 weak banks for later repair. They gathered around the gate. "Half an inch," Mara said. Gabriel fitted the wheel. "An inch would give us enough to see flow at the culvert. Half. The pond is above the middle notch, barely, which is why we test. With half an inch." His hands tightened on the wheel. Nora leaned against the new rail. Her gait. Gabriel looked at Mara. Then he turned the wheel slowly until the board lifted the width of her little finger. For a moment, water only pressed against the opening. Then it burst through with a throat-clearing cough, carrying leaves and dark silt into the channel. Mara's pulse jumped. The flow looked larger than she expected, fast enough to bend grass flat. She checked the pond mark Warren had cut into the post, then followed Gabriel and Nora along the channel. Water advanced in fits. It filled holes, vanished beneath roots, reappeared several feet ahead. At the boundary culvert, it pooled behind the clogged entrance. Gabriel reached for a rake. "Wait," Mara said. "We have to clear it. I know. I want to see how fast it backs up." He stopped. They watched the pool rise around the pipe. Water found a low edge and began spreading toward the bank. "Too fast," Mara said. "Clear it." Gabriel pulled leaves free while Nora stood downstream calling the level. The backed-up water dropped suddenly and shot through the culvert. They ran to the other side. A brown tongue of water emerged onto Holt land, slid along the dry ditch, and stopped 20 yards later as thirsty soil absorbed it. Gabriel stared at the darkened earth. "It'll take hours to reach the pond at that rate," he said. "Then it takes hours," Mara replied. "We could raise the gate." She checked the time, the mark she had drawn at the pond, and Warren's note about the north feeder. "No. We hold this until sunset and close it overnight." Gabriel looked ready to object. Then water crept another foot along the Holt ditch. "All right," he said, "half an inch." He spoke the measurement like a concession. Mara heard something else beneath it. Her decision had crossed the boundary, and he had let it stand. They walked the ditch every 30 minutes. At first, the water seemed to make no progress. It soaked into cracks, filled shallow depressions, and disappeared under last year's grass. Gabriel checked his watch so often Mara wanted to confiscate it. At the third check, the dark line had advanced another 40 yards. "At this rate, the onions will be retired before it reaches them," he said. "The onions aren't planted." "Exactly." Mara pushed a stick into the damp soil and marked the water's edge. "Come back in half an hour." "You enjoy saying that?" "I enjoy watching you survive it." Nora had returned to the packing barn, leaving them with a test flow and a thermos of coffee neither needed. They sat on opposite sides of the ditch while afternoon light thinned over the fields. Gabriel pulled a blade of dead grass apart lengthwise. "What did you do before the motel?" he asked. "Other motels? That can't be the whole answer. It's most of the answer." Mara had worked wherever a manager needed someone reliable more than a resume. A grocery deli, a commercial laundry, 6 months answering phones at a plumbing company until the owner's brother wanted the desk. None of it sounded like a path when spoken aloud. "I started community college," she said. "Business administration? What happened? My mother died. Warren needed help with the house. Tuition needed money." Gabriel nodded, not with sympathy, but recognition. "You kept meaning to go back, yes. So did I." She looked at him. "For what?" "Agricultural engineering. That sounds useful. It sounded expensive. What did you do instead?" "Came home for 1 season." "How long ago?" 14 years. Mara smiled. Long season, bad weather. At the next check, water had passed her stick. By sunset, it had traveled nearly half the distance to the irrigation pond. The channel behind it remained shallow but steady. Mara returned to the gate and lowered it until the opening closed. The wooden board met the sill with a heavy knock. The channel continued running for several minutes on water already released. Gabriel watched it diminish. If we had opened an inch, we didn't. It might have reached the pond, and we wouldn't know how much level we lost overnight. He glanced at the pond mark. They had lost less than a 1/4 inch, though feeder flow had replaced some of it. "That was good," he admitted. "You should rest. You've had a difficult day." I said good. I didn't say enjoyable. Mara locked the wheel with Warren's old chain. Gabriel waited while she pocketed the key. On the drive back to her truck, he slowed at the boundary culvert. "You want to ride to the motel?" he asked. "My truck is at the road. I know. Your right brake light is out, so it'll be dark by the time you leave work. Are you offering to fix it? I'm asking if you want to ride." The distinction made her look at him. "No," she said, "but thank you for asking." He nodded. "Bring the truck tomorrow. I have a bulb." "That sounds like fixing it." "That sounds like a bulb." She drove to work with 20 minutes to spare and mud drying inside her boot. Denise looked at the clock, then at Mara's clothes. "Laundry room," she said. "I'm on front desk. You smell like a pond. I own that smell now. Congratulations." Laundry room. At 7, a guest complained that his towels were rough. At 9, a dryer belt snapped. At 10:30, Mara fell asleep sitting upright for 11 seconds and woke when Denise dropped a washcloth on her head. "You cannot die in my linen chair," Denise said. "It'll ruin the cushion." I blinked. You snored through the blink. Mara stood and reached for the next cart. Her bandaged hand throbbed, though the redness had stopped spreading. Denise blocked the cart with one foot. "Go upstairs. I need the hours. You need a spine that still bends when you're 40. Are you paying me for the hour?" "No." "Then I need the hour." Denise stared at her, unhappy with the math, but unable to change it. She moved her foot. The next morning, the marsh pond stood at the same mark. Mara checked twice to be certain. The feeders had replaced what she released. She opened the gate half an inch again. On the 3rd day, the water reached Holt Farm's irrigation pond. It arrived without drama, a clear ribbon slipping from the north ditch into green water. No machinery started. No field changed color. The pond did not visibly rise. Gabriel stood with his hands on his hips and watched as though a parade had come down the bank. Nora brought 3 mugs and a bottle of something she claimed was sparkling cider left from New Year's. "It's April," Gabriel said. "It aged. In your refrigerator? Temperature controlled." The cider had gone flat. They drank it anyway. Mara kept looking from the entering water to the intake pipe. "This isn't enough." "It's more than we had," Nora said. "We can increase slowly after the feeders stabilize." Gabriel lifted his mug. "I am not arguing. No one asked you to announce it. I wanted witnesses." Nora pulled a folded page from her pocket. "In numbers." They sat in the farm office with the yield ledgers, Nora's maintenance list, and Mara's notebook. Mara proposed a base seasonal fee small enough to cover her property taxes and basic materials, plus an additional amount if the irrigated fields exceeded the previous year's harvest. Holt labor and diesel would count toward repairs, but not toward the fee once regular water delivery began. Gabriel read the page twice. "You want a percentage. I want the payment connected to whether the water helps. What if prices fall? Then the harvest amount stays the same, but the bonus drops with your sales. What if the flow stops in July? The base fee drops for every week I can't supply the minimum we agree on. Nora leaned over the figures. She takes some drought risk. So do we, Gabriel said. You're already taking all of it, Mara replied. He looked at her. She tapped the ledger. Last year you paid for emergency pipe, a motor, and crops you couldn't harvest. This costs less than that. It costs more than Warren charged. Warren had different expenses, and you helped him more regularly. Gabriel looked toward the office window. The small stream continued entering the pond. We need to define minimum flow, he said. Relief moved through Mara so quickly she nearly showed it. Instead, she handed him the pencil. Write a number. They argued for an hour. By the end, the paper was crowded with arrows, crossed-out figures, and a coffee ring Nora claimed had legal force. Nothing was signed. They agreed to measure the flow for 10 days, track the pond level on both properties, and meet again before planting finished. Mara folded the page into her notebook. When she stepped outside, Dean's truck was parked beside hers. He stood near the packing barn, arms folded, clean boots planted in Holt mud. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I came looking for you. How did you know where to look?" "Your truck is visible from the road." Gabriel appeared in the office doorway. Nora remained inside, though Mara could feel her listening. Dean looked past Mara toward the irrigation pond. "So it's true." "What's true?" "You opened the marsh. I opened a gate. And you're sending water over here. That's where the channel goes." Dean gave Gabriel a brief nod that was returned with equal warmth. "I thought you were selling them the parcel," Dean said. "I'm not." "Then why are you spending every day working for them?" "I'm working on my land, with their equipment, with an agreement." The word changed Dean's expression. "What kind of agreement?" "The kind between the landowner and the farm using the water. Warren never charged them." Gabriel stepped off the office threshold. "We maintain the whole system. I'm talking to my sister, and you're talking about my farm." Mara raised a hand. "I don't need either of you to improve this." Gabriel's mouth closed. Dean's did not. "Russell said you took a trailer load of rock," he said. "Russell gave it to me. It came from the main property. It came from Warren. Everything came from Warren. Yes, Dean. That is generally how inheritance works." He glanced at the ditch. Water slid quietly past his boots toward the pond. "The hayfield is dry," he said. Mara waited. "If the marsh has enough water to send over here, it has enough to help the lower field. It's downhill from your hayfield. There used to be a pump. The pump moves water within the marsh. It doesn't send it uphill half a mile. You don't know that. I have Warren's records." Something sharp entered his face. "Records you took from the house? They were in my shed. So now everything in the shed is yours?" The unfairness was so complete it almost impressed her. "Yes," Mara said. "That was the arrangement you wanted." Dean looked back toward Gabriel. "Did you know Warren's water came off our fields?" "Some of it," Gabriel said. "It also comes from springs. Our runoff feeds that pond, and our lower field takes its overflow in storms." Dean returned his attention to Mara. "This affects more than your parcel." There it was. The first widening of we. At Warren's table, the marsh had been hers because nobody else wanted the cost. Now that water moved through it, the boundaries had become philosophical. Mara stepped closer. "Are you asking to help maintain the system?" "I maintain the land that supplies it." "No. Rain falls on land you own. That isn't work." Nora coughed inside the office. Dean heard it. Color rose along his neck. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "You keep traveling a long way for that. I came because we're sorting Grandpa's things Sunday. If you want anything, be there at 10. I already told you what I wanted. You said notebooks, and I got them." His gaze dropped to the black cover beneath her arm. He had dismissed them until they taught her something he did not know. "What are the Holts paying you?" he asked. Mara looked at the water entering the pond. "Nothing yet. Yet." The word carried more interest than he had shown in 38 acres of marsh. Dean put his hands in his pockets. "Sunday at 10? He walked back to his truck, leaving clean boot prints beside the ditch. Gabriel waited until the engine faded. "You want me there Sunday?" he asked. "No." "All right. You don't know what I'm going to say. You said no." The simplicity of his answer eased something in her. Nora came out with the ledgers held against her chest. "He seems pleasant." That was Dean trying. What's he like when he isn't? Mara watched the last of his truck disappear beyond the barn. He calls it family. Sunday morning, Warren's house smelled like lemon cleaner. Dean had removed the menthol ointment from the bathroom, washed the plaid cover from Warren's recliner, and put a gray rug inside the front door. The new rug said, "Home" in white letters. Mara stood on it longer than necessary. Paige came through the hallway carrying a cardboard box. "You made it. I said I would." "You say a lot of things when you're mad." "Do I?" Paige considered that. "Maybe we all hear more when you're mad." It was close enough to insight that Mara did not know what to do with it. The dining table had been extended. Warren's belongings were arranged in categories, each with a handwritten sign: kitchen, clothing, tools, donate. Papers that no one wanted to inspect filled a laundry basket near the wall. Russell sat in Warren's chair, eating a powdered donut. Dean entered with a box of medicine bottles. "These go to the pharmacy." Mara took the box from him automatically. "Not all of them. They'll take prescriptions, not vitamins." Dean let go. "You know better than I do." It might have been an acknowledgement. It sounded too much like another task. Mara set the box beside the laundry basket and began sorting. Warren's morning pills remained in the organizer for the day after he died. She pressed the plastic lids shut without looking at the labels. Russell wiped sugar from his fingers. "How's the water business?" "There is no water business. Dean said you're charging the Holtz. We're measuring flow." "Before or after you bottle it?" Paige smiled despite herself. Mara did not. Russell's smile faltered. "It was a joke." "I know. You used to laugh. I used to think you were helping." The room became very interested in cardboard. Russell folded the top of his donut bag. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." Mara believed him. That did not make the years of jokes harmless. Russell had always sensed the moment a room turned cruel and tossed humor over it like a rug, often while Mara was still underneath. "I want Warren's green bowl," she said. Paige pointed to the kitchen boxes. "Anything in those is open." The chipped cereal bowl lay wrapped in newspaper beside 3 coffee mugs. Mara removed it and found a small brown stain in the crack near the rim. She had scrubbed that stain dozens of times. It was not dirt. It was part of the bowl now. She set it in her own box. Warren's pocket knife was missing. She checked the toolboxes, then the basket of papers, then the shallow tray labeled personal. "Looking for something?" Dean asked. "His knife." Russell felt his pocket. The movement was small and guilty. Mara held out her hand. "Come on," he said. "I asked about this Friday." "You asked who?" "Dean." "It wasn't Dean's. Neither was the bowl, technically." "The knife matters to me. It matters to me, too." "Why?" Russell stood. He pulled out the knife, but kept it in his palm. The red bone handle was worn pale at both ends. "Grandpa taught me to sharpen with this." Mara had not known that. Russell turned the knife over. "I used to come out to the barn on Saturdays when Mom worked. Before you were around much. He'd give me scrap wood and tell me not to cut toward my thumb." "Did you?" 4 stitches. He showed her a faint white line at the base of his thumb. Mara had seen the scar before and never asked about it. The simple story irritated the shape she had made for him. Russell could sell the tractor and still love Warren. He could remember something real. Mara lowered her hand. "Keep it." "You sure?" "No, but keep it." Russell closed the knife and put it back in his pocket more carefully. "Take the loppers too," he said. "And there's a red marked shovel by the side door." "Thank you." He nodded, relieved enough to become quiet. They worked for an hour. Paige chose Warren's mantel clock, though she disliked ticking. Dean kept the old cast-iron skillet. Mara took the wool blanket from the back of the recliner, a photograph of Warren standing beside an enormous pumpkin, and the boots from the mudroom. The boots were cracked and nearly useless. Dean watched her place them in her box. "You're not going to wear those?" "No." "What will you do with them?" "I don't know." The answer seemed to trouble him. At noon, Paige ordered sandwiches. They ate around the table among boxes and dust outlines where framed pictures had been. For a while, the conversation stayed ordinary. Russell complained about a restaurant owner who wanted 12 used refrigerators delivered through one narrow door. Paige described her plans for 3 rental cabins on the road acreage. "The soil guy says the back half stays too wet," she said. "I might need drainage." Mara unwrapped her sandwich. "Where would it drain?" Paige paused. "Downhill, I assume." "Downhill is the Marsh. That's why I'm bringing it up." "You weren't." I'm bringing it up now. Dean set down his soda. This is what I wanted to discuss. Mara looked from him to Paige. The sandwiches were camouflage. No one is ambushing you, Paige said. You put potato chips on the table first. That's planning. Russell made a sound into his cup, but wisely did not turn it into a joke. Dean spread a clean copy of the parcel map between the food. The blue line of the Marsh system crossed near the lower edge of his hayfield before entering Mara's land. Water moves through all 4 parcels, he said. Not Russell's timber. Runoff from the ridge goes somewhere. Eventually everything goes somewhere. That doesn't make the county river ours. Paige leaned forward. You're being defensive before you hear the idea. Because your ideas keep ending with my signature. The marsh could be managed as a family asset. You keep ownership of the acreage, but decisions about drainage and use would be shared. Shared by whom? All of us. Russell too? Russell raised both hands. I didn't design this, Dean continued. The Holt agreement affects the rest of the property. If you hold more water, my lower field could flood. If you release too much, Paige might not have enough capacity to drain her back acreage. Capacity where? In the basin. My marsh. Our grandfather built it to support the whole property, and you left it to me. We divided acreage before anybody knew you planned to commercialize the water. Mara stared at him. You called Gabriel before I signed because you knew the water mattered. I knew the Holts might buy wet ground. That isn't the same thing. Paige's voice softened. Mara, nobody thinks you shouldn't benefit. We could pay you for managing it. The offer was almost elegant. Mara would do the work. They would make the decisions. If it failed, she would be the manager. If it succeeded, it would be the family's. What happens to the taxes? She asked. Paige looked at Dean. Mara smiled without humor. Still mine. That can be part of the discussion. What happens when the shed roof collapses? We share necessary expenses, Dean said. Like the drainage rock Russell didn't need until I asked for it. Russell stared at his sandwich. Dean's patience thinned. We're trying to protect everybody. You didn't protect me from the marsh when you thought it was worthless. No one said worthless. You used underwater as a selling point. You signed the agreement. The sentence came exactly when Mara knew it would. She folded her napkin and put it on the table. Then honor it. Paige reached toward her. Don't leave angry. I arrived angry. I'm leaving with a bowl. Mara. She picked up her box. It was heavier than expected, mostly because of Warren's boots. Dean followed her onto the porch. Holt trucks can't keep using the lower lane without contributing to maintenance. They've used it twice. It's soft. The trailer left ruts. I'll fill them. With what equipment? She turned. He stood beneath the porch roof, Warren's house at his back. Mara said, What do you want? I want you to slow down. No? You want me to need permission. I want you to remember this land is connected. It was connected when I was bathing Grandpa. None of you felt the pull then. Dean's face went still. That's low, he said. It was low while it was happening, too. She carried the box to her pickup. The hay wagon appeared across the lower lane 2 mornings later. It had been parked sideways just beyond the county road, tongue resting on a block, all 4 tires sunk slightly into the soft ground. Mara could not drive around it without putting her truck in the ditch. She called Dean. I'm using it in the south field, he said. It's in the lane. I know where it is. Move it. I can move it Friday. It's Wednesday. The tractor's with Russell. Then ask Russell. I did. He's showing it to a buyer. Mara looked at the wagon. Its bed was empty. You did this on purpose? I parked farm equipment on farm property. You blocked my access. You can walk around it. I have tools. Then carry them. The quiet satisfaction beneath his voice hurt more than open anger. Mara hung up. She stood beside the truck until Gabriel's utility vehicle came through the distant reeds on the Holt side. He had expected her at the gate. When he saw her by the road, he stopped at the boundary and walked the rest of the way. What happened? She pointed. He studied the wagon. Want me to pull it? Yes. He glanced toward Dean's fields. Do you have permission? No. Then I won't. Anger surged before she understood what he was giving her. Gabriel continued. You can bring your truck through our farm. The east track is rough, but it's open. I don't want Dean to think this worked. Then don't let it stop the work. She looked at the hay wagon, then at Gabriel. Can the east track handle my truck? If you avoid the washout. Is the washout obvious? It will be after you hit it. Mara laughed despite herself. He held out his hand, not to take her keys, but to help her across the ditch. This time, she took it. By noon, Nora had marked the east track with stakes. Gabriel brought Mara's tools through in the utility vehicle. Nobody moved Dean's wagon. Nobody asked him again. At the gate, the pond had risen another half-inch. The agreement page lay beneath a flat stone on the new handrail, ready for the final numbers. Mara read the terms once more and signed her name. Gabriel signed beneath it. Nora signed as witness and added the date. Then Gabriel handed Mara an envelope containing the first portion of the base fee. It was not a fortune. It covered the property taxes due that month, the hardware receipt, and little else. Mara held it with dirty fingers and felt something larger than relief. Dean had blocked the road to remind her how little she controlled. Water had found another way in. So had she. Mara deposited the check and paid the taxes before she could become attached to the balance in her account. She bought the hip waders she had put back at the hardware store, a roll of roofing felt, and enough lumber to brace the worst wall of the pump shed. The remaining money went into an envelope marked Marsh that she hid behind the oatmeal in her kitchen cabinet. For 3 weeks the system behaved. The pond level rose at night and dropped during releases. Clear water moved through the repaired culvert, along the Holt ditch, and into the irrigation pond. Nora tracked the pump hours. Gabriel measured field moisture with a metal probe he distrusted but used anyway. Mara recorded everything in a new notebook beside Warren's old ones. The onion rows turned green. From the road, that was all anyone could see. Not the hours spent clearing grass from the dividers. Not Mara standing in the pond during a hot afternoon, holding a replacement gateboard while leeches found her ankles. Not Gabriel driving to the marsh at midnight, because a storm dropped half an inch of rain, and Mara did not yet trust the overflow. People saw green and assumed water had simply been waiting for someone to notice it was valuable. Dean moved the hay wagon on Friday, as promised. He left 2 deep tire holes in the lane where the wheels had settled. Mara filled them with broken stone, carried through Holt Farm. She did not tell him. The next time Gabriel came to the gate, he held up a small cardboard box. "Brake light," he said. Mara looked at her pickup. "Are you asking? Do you want me to replace it?" "Yes." "Good." I was running out of ways to hold the box politely. He changed the bulb while she checked the pond gauge. When she returned, he was leaning against the tailgate, waiting for her to test it. "Press the brake," he said. "You press it, it's your truck. You don't trust me to tell you whether the light works?" "I trust you. I don't trust your face when you lie. What does my face do?" The left side looks innocent. She climbed into the cab and pressed the pedal. Gabriel raised one thumb behind the truck. Later, Mara caught herself smiling at the memory while folding motel sheets. Denise saw. "Who is he?" she asked. "No one." "Then no one has good timing. Usually you look homicidal during fitted sheets." "It was a brake light." Denise nodded gravely. "Filthy." Mara snapped a sheet open between them. "Can you stop? I have not begun." The smile left easily enough when Paige called that evening. "Are you coming to Grandpa's birthday supper?" she asked. Mara balanced the phone against her shoulder and pushed a linen cart toward the service elevator. "He's dead." "Yes, Mara, we're aware." "Then I don't think he'll care. We thought it would be nice to get everyone together. Aunt Celia is coming. Russell's bringing the slideshow from the service." Warren had hated slideshows. He said photographs should remain still, and people should be allowed to look away. "When?" Mara asked. "Saturday at 6. Dean's house." Mara stopped the cart. Warren's house, she thought. Dean wants to cook his brisket. Dean buys brisket from Murphy's and heats it in his smoker. He applies smoke. "That's not cooking." Paige laughed. For a few seconds they were cousins before inheritance had turned every noun into territory. "Come," Paige said. "Please. It's been ugly." The softness in her voice was real. Paige disliked conflict, though not enough to surrender anything that benefited her. She preferred harmony after winning. "All right," Mara said. "Will you bring the bean salad?" Of course there was a task. Mara made Warren's bean salad Saturday afternoon. He used too much vinegar and no recipe. Her first attempt tasted flat. So she added another splash, then another, until the smell stung her nose. She arrived at 6:10. Cars lined both sides of the driveway. Dean had hung white string lights across the porch. Through the screen door, Mara heard adult voices, dishes, and the opening bars of one of Warren's favorite songs. For a moment, she wanted to believe Paige. Inside, relatives touched Mara's arm and told her she looked tired. Aunt Celia hugged her long enough to transfer face powder onto Mara's shoulder. Russell took the salad and said, "This could strip paint. Perfect." Paige wore a cream blouse and the mantel clock's brass key on a ribbon around her neck like jewelry. Dean handed Mara a glass of iced tea. "Glad you came?" The generosity of the gesture made her wary. "What do I have to sign?" His smile disappeared. "Can we have one night?" "I'd like one." She went to the mudroom. Warren's boots no longer stood beside the door because they were in her room above the laundromat. Dean had installed shelves where they had been. Clean work shoes lined the bottom. On the wall, the peg where Warren's cap once hung had been removed. Mara touched the 2 small screw holes. "There you are," Russell said behind her. He held an unopened beer in each hand and offered her one. "I'm driving. So am I." "These are props." She took the bottle anyway. Russell glanced toward the kitchen, then lowered his voice. "They're gonna bring up the water thing." "I know. You always know 5 minutes before everyone else. Because everyone gets strange. I'm always strange. You get helpful." He rubbed the back of his neck. Mara waited. "Dean thinks there should be one management plan," he said. "Paige needs drainage before she can build. The hayfield's drying out. You're sending water to the Holts and taking money. I'm also maintaining the basin that catches their runoff. I understand that, do you? I understand enough to know this is getting bad. It was bad at the table when you let them give me land nobody wanted." Russell flinched. "I'm not blaming you alone," Mara said. "That really softens it. You made me laugh while it happened. I thought it would help. It helped everyone else." Russell turned the beer bottle between his palms. "If you agree to shared control, I'll make sure they don't push you out. You keep the parcel. You manage it. We put in writing that you get the Holt payments. In exchange for what? We forgive the way this started and move forward." Mara looked at him. He heard the word only after it left him. "Forgive," she said. "That came out wrong." "Which part?" "I mean, everybody stops acting like somebody stole something." "Did I?" "No." "Then what are you forgiving?" Russell's face reddened. He looked toward the kitchen again. "You know what people are saying?" "No. Tell me." "Paige told Aunt Celia that Grandpa might have promised the Holts permanent access. He didn't. That you found notebooks nobody else has seen. They were in my shed, and that you were the only one with him near the end." Mara's hand tightened around the unopened beer. Russell spoke quickly. "I told her that didn't mean anything. What does she think it means? She's worried you're using things Grandpa said when he wasn't clear." The room beyond the mudroom seemed to recede. Plates touched countertops. Someone laughed at a story Mara could not hear. She thought of Warren unable to lift his spoon. Warren waking frightened because he did not recognize his bedroom. Warren apologizing after she changed his sheets, though the apology required words he could no longer arrange. Paige had brought ham. "Did Dean say that too?" Mara asked. Dean told her to drop it. That surprised her. Russell took a step closer. "Sign onto the family plan, and this goes away." "No. It gets rewarded. It brings you back in." The offer struck exactly where he intended, though she did not think Russell was cruel enough to understand why. Back in. Mara had spent years on the edge of family photographs, holding coats, washing serving dishes, arriving early, and leaving with trash bags. The possibility of being invited to make decisions instead of summoned to perform them tugged hard. Then she pictured the parcel map with her land colored blue. She pictured Nora's maintenance list, Gabriel stopping his hand when she said no. Water moving at 1/2 inch because Mara had chosen 1/2 inch. "I was never in," she said. Russell's mouth opened. Dean called everyone to the dining room before he could answer. They stood around Warren's table with brisket casseroles and Mara's sharp bean salad. The slideshow began on a television in the corner. Warren appeared younger in every picture than he had been in Mara's hands. Dean raised his glass. "I know Grandpa would hate all this attention," he said, earning the expected laugh. "But I wanted us together because he believed family meant carrying something forward." Mara looked at the empty place where Warren's chair had been. Dean had moved it into the living room. "He left us more than property," Dean continued. "He left us standards. Work hard. Keep your word. Take care of what takes care of you." The words belonged to Warren. Hearing Dean use them felt like finding someone else wearing his coat. Dean thanked Aunt Celia for organizing flowers at the service. He thanked Paige for bringing new plans and energy to the road acreage. He thanked Russell for preserving Warren's tools and machinery, though the tractor had been sold that week. Then, he thanked everyone who's committed to keeping the Vance land whole and keeping the family name worth something. Glasses lifted. Mara waited. Dean took a drink. He had not forgotten her. The omission was too clean. Around the table, eyes slid toward her and away. Paige studied her plate. Russell's face had gone miserable. Aunt Celia gave Mara a small, encouraging smile, as if to say good behavior might still earn her mention later. Mara set down her untouched glass. Paige whispered, "Not now." Mara looked at her. "I didn't say anything. That's what I mean." And there it was. Even her silence required management. Mara walked to the kitchen, picked up the empty bowl she had brought, and carried it toward the door. Dean caught her on the porch. "You're leaving before supper?" The speech filled me up. "I wasn't taking a shot at you. You thanked Russell for preserving a tractor he sold. That was about more than one tractor." "I know. It was about making everybody understand I don't count." Dean looked back through the screen. "This night is for Grandpa. I washed him on his last birthday because he was too weak to stand. Don't tell me which nights were for him." His face crumpled for half a second. Mara saw guilt, grief, and anger rush to cover each other. "You chose to do that," he said. The sentence landed softly. That was what made it final. No one had forced Mara to care for Warren. No one had needed to, because they knew she would. Her choice had become the door through which everyone else escaped obligation. "Yes," she said, "I did." She went down the steps. "Mara, wait." She turned beside her truck. Dean stood under Warren's string lights, looking almost like the brother who used to drive across town when her battery died. "If you keep cutting yourself off," he said, "eventually no one will come after you." Mara thought of the blocked lane, the blue parcel, and the toast made over food she had prepared. "You only come after me when I have something you want." She drove to the marsh. Night had settled over the pond. A lantern glowed beside the gate, where Gabriel was checking the chain before the overnight closure. He heard her boots and turned. "I thought you had supper." "I did." He looked at the empty bowl under her arm. "How was it?" Mara sat on the new handrail. "Do you need me to talk?" "No." "Good." Gabriel finished locking the wheel, then sat on the bank a few feet away. He did not ask why she was there, did not offer to fix the evening, and did not touch her. Water whispered beneath the gate. After a while, Mara said, "They want the Marsh back. Are you giving it to them?" "No." The answer came without heat. It no longer needed any. Gabriel nodded toward the dark pond. "Then we should check the west feeder before the rain." "What rain?" He pointed beyond the trees. Far to the north, lightning flickered inside a bank of clouds too distant for thunder. Mara set down the bowl and stood. This time, when she followed him into the reeds, she did not look back toward Warren's house. The west feeder was clear. Mara checked it twice because she needed something to be wrong that she could remove with her hands. Gabriel stood in ankle-deep water, holding the lantern while moths battered themselves against the glass. "Bank's firm," he said. "I know. Flow hasn't changed. I know. You want to keep pretending we're here for the feeder?" "Yes." "All right." They walked the channel again. The distant lightning drew closer, flashing white behind the trees. Thunder arrived faint and late. Mara waited for the first drop of rain, but the wind only lifted the dry cattail leaves and set them whispering against one another. At the gate, she checked the lock, then checked it again. Gabriel leaned against the new rail. Warren used to do that. Lock it? Check everything twice when he was angry. "I'm not angry." "Then you're doing it exactly like him." Mara pulled the chain hard enough to make the wheel complain. "Did he talk about us? Your family? Me?" Gabriel looked toward the pond. "Sometimes." "What did he say?" "That you work too much." She laughed without humor. "That's rich. He said you were the only Vance who could hear a machine change pitch from 2 rooms away. I worked in a commercial laundry. He said you knew when his furnace was about to quit before he did." "I knew because it smelled like burnt dust. Still knew." A few drops struck the pond, each opening a dark ring. Mara lifted her face. The rain stopped before she could count 10. Gabriel lowered the lantern. "For what it's worth, he didn't talk about you like an obligation. He let me become one. That can happen without somebody deciding it. You're defending him. No. I'm telling you he was complicated enough to love you and still take too much." The words hurt because they left Warren human. Mara could not make him an innocent old man surrounded by selfish relatives. He had called her because she came. He had allowed her reliability to become invisible, same as everyone else. She sat on the rail. Gabriel remained standing until she shifted the empty bowl beside her. Then he sat. My father kept farming 6 months after he couldn't feel 2 fingers on his left hand, he said. Nora and I begged him to stop. We also let him keep doing payroll because neither of us wanted it. What happened? He paid the fertilizer company twice and didn't pay the electric bill. Mara glanced at him. The fertilizer company returned the second check. The electric company was less sentimental. Why are you telling me this? Because loving somebody badly isn't the same as not loving them. Thunder rolled again. The storm moved east without giving them rain. Mara's shoulder rested against Gabriel's for one quiet second. Neither of them adjusted. The drought tightened through summer. Grass along the county road turned the color of rope. Dean cut his hay early and baled less than half his usual amount. The bare soil behind Page's road frontage hardened into plates, though water still gathered in the test holes beneath the surface. Russell's tractor buyer hauled Warren's machine away on a flatbed. At the marsh, the springs continued. Not generously, not miraculously. They entered in thin, dependable currents that Mara measured each morning. She reduced the Holt release during the hottest weeks, and Gabriel objected each time before checking her figures and admitting she was right. The onions survived, so did the lower beans. Mara used the first bonus payment to buy used corrugated panels for the pump shed roof. Gabriel helped install them, after asking in an exaggeratedly formal voice whether the landowner desired assistance. The landowner desires you not fall through, Mara said. Unclear. Please submit in writing. Nora threw a glove at him from the ladder. They straightened the worst wall and partitioned the dry end with salvaged boards. Mara put a cot beside the notebooks so she could stay during overnight releases instead of driving back to the laundromat at 2 a.m. The shed still smelled of oil and had no plumbing, but the roof stopped leaking. Denise gave her an old electric kettle. There's no electricity, Mara said. Then it's decorative. Thank you. You're welcome. By harvest, the Holt packing barn smelled of onions, dust, and hot machinery. The crop was not their best. Gabriel said this often, usually while standing beside bins fuller than the previous years. Nora finally told him, if you minimize one more onion, I'll hit you with produce. Mara was checking weights against their agreement. Use a small one. The large ones affect my bonus. Gabriel looked offended. This partnership has corrupted both of you. Partnership. The word no longer sounded like a temporary arrangement. That evening, after the last truck left, he walked Mara to her pickup. Dust had settled in his hair and turned the shoulders of his shirt gray. You were right about the July reduction, he said. Put it in a card. I want to preserve this. I said it 3 times. You said the words while arguing. Still counts. He stopped beside the repaired brake light. Mara leaned against the tailgate. Are you waiting for something? Yes. What? Permission. The teasing left his face before hers did. Mara's pulse changed. For what? She asked, though she understood. To kiss you. The fact that he asked was the thing that undid her. Yes, she said. Gabriel touched her cheek with one hand, carefully enough to make her want less care. She caught the front of his shirt and pulled him closer. The kiss tasted faintly of dust and bad coffee. It was brief, then not brief. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. Nora's voice carried from the packing barn. I can still see both of you. Gabriel closed his eyes. Mara laughed against his shoulder. Nothing became simple afterward. Gabriel remained impatient. Mara remained quick to hear control where he intended concern. They argued about flow levels, rotted boards, and whether her truck's engine noise qualified as a warning or a personality. But he asked. Every time, he asked. The first real rain appeared in the forecast near the end of September. 4 inches were possible, maybe more if the storm stalled against the ridge. The dry county greeted the news like a promise. Mara read it as a load calculation. She lowered the marsh pond 6 inches over 2 days, sending water through the Holt system and across their harvested lower field. Nora cleared the south overflow. Gabriel reinforced the boundary culvert. They removed loose tools from the pump shed and stacked sandbags near the repaired bank. Dean appeared on the north side, while Mara was checking the high water mark. You're draining it, he said. I'm making room. For whose water? Everybody's. The hayfield behind him was brown and cut close. Deep cracks opened between clumps of grass. Dean pointed toward Holt Farm. You're flooding their field. It's fallow. The water spreads there safely. You could pump some up here. The old pump doesn't have that reach. You've had all summer to fix it. For what? To push water uphill through pipe that doesn't exist? His mouth tightened. You found a way when they paid you. Mara looked at him. If you want irrigation next year, we can talk about what it would take. Pipe, pump, electricity, maintenance. But the storm is coming now. So now I'm another customer. You wanted separate parcels. You don't have to keep saying that. Apparently I do. Dean stared at the lowered pond. Paige says her acreage needs a controlled outlet. Paige needs to stop planning drainage into land she doesn't manage. Water runs downhill, Mara, and if everybody digs a shortcut before 4 inches of rain, it runs downhill fast. He looked toward the shallow swale carrying runoff from his lower hay fields into the north edge of the marsh. Years of grass and roots slowed it before it reached the basin. Don't cut that swale, she said. I didn't say I would. You looked at it like Russell looked at the tractor. That doesn't even make sense. It does to me. Dean walked back toward his truck. Dean, he stopped. Let the field spread the rain, she said. If you channel it, you send all the soil and water here at once. I know my land. So did Warren. That's why the swale is grass. Dean left without answering. The storm arrived the following afternoon. Rain struck the shed roof in hard silver bursts, stopped for 10 minutes, then returned with enough force to erase the opposite bank. Mara watched the pond rise against the gauge. 1 inch, then 2. The feeders ran brown instead of clear, carrying the first wash from the dry ground. The gate stood open 4 inches, moving water steadily toward Holt Farm. Nora radioed from downstream that the ditch was holding. Gabriel came through the reeds wearing a yellow slicker and carrying 2 shovels. North bank's climbing faster, he said. I see it. Runoff from the hayfield. They checked the swale. Water spread through the grass exactly as it should, shallow and slow. Mara felt a small, fierce relief. Then an engine started beyond the rain. A rented trenching machine crawled along Dean's lower field. Dean walked behind it, shoulders bent against the storm, cutting a dark line straight toward the marsh. Mara climbed the fence. Shut it down, she yelled. The machine continued. She ran through wet grass, slipping twice before she reached him. Dean stopped the trencher, but left the engine idling. What are you doing? Keeping the lower field from sitting underwater. It isn't underwater, it will be. The swale is handling it, for now. You're cutting through the root bed. I'm giving the water a direct route. I told you what that does. You told me to let my field flood so the Holts stay dry. No, I told you the whole system needs time. Rain ran down his face. Easy to say when all the water ends up on your land. That's what the marsh does, then let it do it. He dropped the trenching blade again. Mara grabbed his arm. Dean jerked away, more startled than violent. This is my field, he said, and that channel ends at my bank. You don't own rain. The phrase was absurd, but beneath it Mara heard every argument from the dining table. The marsh was hers when it required labor. Water belonged to everyone once it had somewhere to go. Gabriel reached them with the shovels. Dean pointed at him. Stay off my property. Gabriel stopped at the fence. Mara stood alone in the cut line. If you finish this, you come help when it fails. Dean looked at the pond, at Gabriel, then back at her. It won't fail. He restarted the trencher. By dark, the new trench was carrying a fast brown stream from the hayfield into the marsh. At first, the basin absorbed it. Then Nora's voice cracked over the radio. Water's rising at the south divider, faster than we can release it. Mara shone her flashlight toward Dean's trench. The stream had become a current thick with mud and pieces of sod. It struck the north bank, curled along the repaired edge, and began eating soil from beneath the stones. A section of orange marking tape vanished. Gabriel lifted his shovel. Where do you need me? Mara looked from the failing bank to the gate, hearing Warren as clearly as if he stood beside her. Water has to have somewhere to go. The lower Holt field, she said. We're opening the south overflow. Gabriel ran for the utility vehicle. Mara stayed at the main gate long enough to raise it another inch. Water hammered through the opening, dark with silt. The wheel kicked under her hands as debris struck the board. She locked it at 5 inches and grabbed the radio. Nora, close the north divider. If I close it, the irrigation pond stops taking flow. That's the point. Send everything south. A burst of static. The lower channel is backing up. Gabriel's coming. I'm behind him. Mara reached the shed as wind drove rain sideways across the pond. Warren's notebooks sat on the bench beneath the dry section of roof. She shoved them into a canvas tool bag, added the signed Holt agreement, and carried the bag outside. A crack sounded behind her. One of the new braces bowed inward, then held. Not tonight, she told the shed. The utility vehicle returned without Gabriel. Mara put the notebooks beneath the seat and drove east along the boundary, both hands locked on the wheel. Water covered sections of the track that had been dry an hour earlier. She hit the washout Gabriel once joked about, knocked her teeth together, and kept going. At the culvert, water had risen over the pipe. Dead grass and chunks of sod packed the entrance. The current spread into the reeds instead of passing under the boundary. Each new surge from Dean's trench added pressure. Mara parked on high ground and grabbed a rake. She worked from the bank, hooking debris and dragging it free. The first clump came easily. The second snagged against the concrete lip. She leaned harder. The bank beneath her right foot cracked. Mara jumped back as a slab of mud slid into the pool. Brown water swallowed it and rose another inch. She moved farther upstream, lay flat on her stomach, and reached with the rake. Rain ran down her sleeves and into her shirt. The hooked end caught the sod. Come on. She pulled. The sod turned, jammed sideways, and blocked the pipe completely. Water spread toward the new handrail. Mara let go of the rake and ran to the utility vehicle for a length of chain. She looped one end through the rake handle, braced the other around a willow trunk, and pulled from the side. The sod tore apart. Water punched through the culvert with a sound like a door being kicked open. The pool dropped so quickly it carried the rake into the pipe. The chain snapped tight against the willow. Mara held on until the first rush passed, then hauled the rake back hand over hand. A flashlight bounced through the rain. Dean appeared on the north bank, wearing a green poncho and carrying a shovel. "You're flooding the lane!" he yelled. "The culvert was blocked by your field. It was blocked before, not with fresh sod." He shone his light across the water. "The trench is cutting wider. I told you it would. What do we do?" The question stopped her. "Not what are you doing? Not why are the Holts getting our water? What do we do?" Mara pointed upstream. "Put sandbags across the trench mouth. Don't close it completely. Slow it. I don't have sandbags. I stacked 40 by the pump shed." Dean stared at her. "You knew this would happen? I knew something could." He looked toward the marsh, where the flashlight showed only hard rain and moving reeds. "How many do you need?" he asked. "Start with 10. Lay them in a shallow V facing the field. If you build a wall, the water goes around and cuts another path." Dean nodded once and ran. Mara drove toward Holt Farm. The south divider lay beyond the irrigation pond, where the main ditch forked. The northern branch served the pond and continued past the barns. The southern branch crossed an old pasture before opening onto the fallow lower field. Nora stood waist-deep in the ditch, fighting the northern gate. "It's jammed!" she called. Gabriel was downstream with a shovel, cutting accumulated grass from the entrance to the southern channel. Water swirled around his boots. Mara climbed into the ditch beside Nora. The cold reached through her waders at once. "What's holding it?" Boards swelled. Together they pulled the gate upward, then shoved it down into its closed slot. It stopped 2 inches short. "Again," Mara said. Nora planted one boot against the frame. Mara gripped the handle with both hands. On the third shove, the board dropped. The northern branch went still. Water rose behind the divider. "South gate!" Gabriel shouted. The southern board had not moved in years. Its handle broke when Gabriel pulled it. For one terrible moment, the three of them stared at the splintered wood. Then Mara remembered a drawing in Warren's notebook. "There's a release pin under the crossbar." "What?" Nora shouted. "Left side." He marked it. Gabriel reached beneath the beam. "I don't feel anything." Lower. The water's lower. Other lower. His arm disappeared to the shoulder. His face changed. "Got it." He pulled. A rusted iron pin came free, and the entire divider board lurched toward him. Water hit it broadside. Gabriel fell backward. Mara caught the back of his slicker while Nora grabbed his arm. The current dragged at all three of them. Gabriel regained his feet, coughing and swearing. "Let it go!" Mara yelled. They released the board. It spun once, struck the bank, and vanished down the southern channel. Water roared through the opening. Gabriel bent with his hands on his knees. Nora struck him between the shoulders. "I'm breathing." he said. That was not medical. Mara touched his face before she remembered to ask. Rain and ditch water ran from his hair. You all right? He nodded. Ask me tomorrow. The channel filled bank to bank and raced toward the fallow field. They followed it, checking each low place. At the first bend, water chewed into exposed soil. Nora drove stakes while Gabriel laid woven brush along the edge. Mara packed wet straw behind it. The repair held long enough for the current to pass. At the field entrance, an old timber sill divided the ditch into 3 shallow runs. The center run was blocked with roots. We open all 3, Mara said. Spread it thin. Gabriel started the saw. For 20 minutes they cut, pulled, and kicked mud from the openings. Water broke through the left run first, then the center. It entered the harvested field in long silver sheets, shallow enough that stalks remained visible. The field began taking the storm. From the rise, Mara could see the packing barn, its security light blurred by rain. The spreading water turned south, away from the buildings. Nora spoke into the radio. South flow is open. Barnside is stable. Only static answered. Mara tried her own radio. Dean? Nothing. Main gate? Gabriel asked. 5 inches when I left. With this much inflow, it may need 6. If we open too far, the culvert backs up again. I'll check it. Mara looked at the water around his knees. You just went under. I noticed. I'll go. It's your gate and your field. Nora took the radio from Mara. I'll stay here. Both of you go before you spend 10 minutes being noble in a flood. They climbed into the utility vehicle. Gabriel drove because Mara's hands had begun trembling. He did not mention it. At the boundary, he stopped to clear another mat of grass from the culvert while Mara continued on foot. The pond had reached Warren's old high water mark. Water pressed against the gate so hard the wheel vibrated. Mara shone her light across the basin. Dean's trench poured into the north side, but the stream had slowed. Above it, a dark line of sandbags broke the current into 2 shallow fans. Dean had listened. He stood near the trench with a shovel, reinforcing one end of the V. When he saw Mara, he raised his light. It's slowing! Keep watching the left side, she called. That's where it'll cut around. What about the pond? It has room. She hoped it did. At the gate, Mara raised the board 1/2 inch. The outflow thickened. She waited, counting breaths, then raised it another 1/2, 6 inches. The pond held at the high mark. For the next 4 hours, the storm tested every repair they had made. The rebuilt north feeder disappeared beneath runoff, but remained in place. Water covered the stone toe, tugged at the woven branches, and failed to take them. The new handrail shook under floating limbs. Gabriel and Mara pulled debris from the gate before it could jam against the opening. Twice Nora radioed that the lower field was nearing the next contour. Mara lowered the main gate 1/2 inch until the water spread. When the pond rose again, she reopened it. There was no single moment of mastery, only measurements, choices, and work. Dean brought more sandbags. On his 3rd trip, he stopped beside Mara at the pond. The lower hay is washing, he said. How much? Along the trench, maybe 20 feet. That edge was always going to go once you cut it. He looked as if he wanted to argue, then looked at the water. Can we stop it? Not without sending the current somewhere worse. Keep slowing the mouth. We repair the edge after. We? The old question sat inside the word. Mara met his eyes. You cut it. You repair it. Dean flinched, but he nodded. Near midnight, the pump shed wall gave a long wooden groan. Mara and Gabriel ran to it. The bowed brace had slipped 1/2 inch. Water pooled against the outside, pressing at the lowest boards. My notebooks, she said. In the vehicle? The tools, replaceable? Warren's still replaceable. She hated him for being right. They cut a shallow relief groove around the shed, using boards to guide water away from the wall. Gabriel held the brace while Mara wedged a stone beneath it. The wall settled back with a shudder. Her cot was soaked. The decorative kettle floated beneath it. Mara caught the kettle by its cord. Denise will ask, she said. Gabriel laughed once, breathless. Tell her it worked. Against what? Despair. The absurdity kept them moving. At 3 a.m, the rain softened, not stopped, softened. The pond fell a 1/4 inch below the high mark. The culvert continued running free. On Holt Farm, Water covered most of the fallow lower field, but remained 50 yards from the packing barn. Nora returned in the utility vehicle with coffee and dry gloves. She handed a mug to Mara. "I found your truck keys under the seat. I wasn't looking for them. You would have been." Gabriel sat in the mud beside the gate, too tired to care. Mara lowered herself beside him. Nora remained standing for 30 seconds before surrendering and joining them. They drank in silence while water moved through the system they had rebuilt. The storm passed east before dawn. Clouds thinned to gray. The flooded field beyond the reeds shone like dull metal. Dean's hayfield was scarred along the new trench, but the wider grass remained rooted. Most of the soil had stayed where it belonged because the sandbags slowed it before it reached the marsh. Mara walked every bank. The repairs held. The pond had taken the surge, stored part of it, and sent the rest where open land could bear it. Holt Farm's buildings stood dry. The irrigation pond was full for the first time that year. When Mara returned to the lower lane, Dean waited beside the hay wagon he had once used to block her. His poncho hung open. Mud covered him to the knees. He held 2 cups from the gas station. He offered one. Mara accepted it because she was cold, not because the night had repaired them. Dean looked across the marsh, then toward his field. "Could have been a lot worse," he said. "Yes. The trench got the standing water off. It sent your topsoil into my bank. But we handled it. Dean smiled tiredly, as if the storm had returned them to the same side of something. Mara held the hot cup between both hands and waited for him to say thank you. Instead, he said, "Grandpa would be proud of us." Mara looked at him over the rim of the coffee cup. "No," she said. Dean's tired smile faded. "No what?" "Grandpa wouldn't be proud of us. He'd ask why you cut through a grass swale he spent 30 years protecting. I was trying to save the field. And when it went wrong, the Holts and I saved it. I hauled sandbags all night, after you sent the water at us." Dean looked toward the trench. In the gray morning, it was an ugly wound across the lower field, a channel of exposed clay with ragged edges. The whole field could have flooded, he said. It was supposed to spread. That's what kept the soil in place. Some of it washed anyway. Because you cut the trench. He threw one hand outward. "I understand that now. The admission hung there." Mara set the coffee on the hay wagon. "Good. Then you'll fill the trench, reseed the swale, and repair the north bank." Dean stared at her. "You're giving me chores? I'm giving you the damage. The bank is on your land. The soil that tore it open came from yours. You can't prove every rock came from my field." Mara almost heard Warren tell her not to waste good sense on a foolish sentence. "I used 22 sandbags, 12 fence stakes, and most of the stone Russell gave me," she said. "I'll make a list. You can replace the materials or pay me what they cost." Dean's laugh was small and disbelieving. "You're billing your brother after a natural disaster?" The storm was natural. The trench was you. Gabriel and Nora were walking up from the boundary, soaked, exhausted, and close enough to hear. Neither stepped into the conversation. Dean glanced at them. His face changed in the presence of witnesses. "So, this is what we do now?" he asked. "Invoices and property lines? You liked property lines when the Marsh was on my side of one. That isn't fair." "No, it's accurate." Mara's voice had not risen. She felt no need to make him understand the whole history before breakfast. He only needed to understand the next step. "Move the hay wagon," she said. "Keep the lower lane open. Fill the trench before the next rain. After that, if you want to talk about irrigation or shared maintenance, come with an offer that includes your own work." Dean studied her as if waiting for the old Mara to arrive and soften the words. She did not. Nora walked past them and retrieved the abandoned gas station coffee. "You drinking this?" she asked Dean. He shook his head. "Waste troubles me," she said, and took it with her. Gabriel stopped beside Mara. He did not touch her or speak for her. His quiet presence seemed to irritate Dean more than interference would have. Dean zipped his poncho. "I'll look at the bank this afternoon. You'll repair it." "I said I'll look." Mara picked up the canvas bag containing Warren's notebooks. "Then I'll send the bill after you look." She walked toward the pond. The hay wagon was gone by noon. Dean did not appear that afternoon. He came the next morning with a trailer of stone and a shovel. He parked on the road and carried the first load down himself. Mara watched from the north bank. "Where's the tractor?" "You know Russell sold it." I wanted to hear you say it. Dean dumped the stone beside the damaged edge. Do you want help or a confession? Today? Help! They worked without discussing Warren, the supper, or the invoice. Dean wanted to stack the largest rocks first. Mara made him dig out the soft mud and rebuild the base. He complained once, then saw the bank shift beneath his boot and stopped complaining. By late afternoon, his palms had blistered. I thought Gabriel did this part, he said. Gabriel knows better than to tell me how my bank should look. Dean gave her a sideways glance. He tells you plenty. Yes. And you don't get mad? I get mad all the time. What's different? Mara fitted a smaller stone between two larger ones. He listens to the answer. Dean bent over the shovel. They finished the repair after sunset. It was not as neat as the first section, but it held when Mara released a bucket of water along the edge. Dean wiped his hands on his jeans. I'll fill the trench tomorrow. Seed it too. I heard you. For once he had. Paige arrived 3 days later, carrying rubber boots that had never seen mud. She stood on the high bank and looked at the flattened reeds, the brown storm line around the pond, and the new stones along Dean's boundary. My back acreage sent runoff here too, she said. Yes. Did it cause damage? Not yet. Paige absorbed the last word. The cabin plan needs drainage, she said. Then slow the water before it leaves your parcel. Grass channels, a shallow holding area. Don't pipe it straight downhill. That takes land away from the building sites. So does flooding. Paige pressed her lips together. Will you help me lay it out? Mara looked at her clean boots. I'll walk the slope with you, she said. I won't manage it for you. What's the difference? You carry the notebook. Paige did. Russell's contribution arrived in the back of his sales van. The red-marked shovel, a pry bar, 2 coils of chain, and a used brush cutter with a repaired fuel line. I didn't steal it, he announced. I wasn't going to ask. You looked like you were. Mara examined the brush cutter. Does it run? Eventually. That isn't an engine condition. It's a family condition. She laughed before deciding whether to. Russell smiled, then wisely left the moment alone. The family did not transform. Dean still believed his first instinct deserved more respect than everyone else's experience. Paige continued speaking about the marsh as if it were a useful feature near her plans. Russell still made jokes when rooms became uncomfortable, but the lane stayed open. Dean filled and reseeded the trench. Paige shaped shallow grass channels on her acreage before breaking ground. Russell stopped claiming that every loose tool belonged to the barn. None of them apologized correctly. They changed behavior in small, imperfect pieces, which Mara discovered was harder to dismiss and more useful than a speech. The storm left work everywhere. Mara and the Holts cleared silt from the boundary culvert, repaired the southern divider, and replaced the board that had vanished into the lower field. The floodwater receded without reaching the packing barn. It left a thin layer of dark soil across the fallow acreage and filled the irrigation pond to its old stain. When Gabriel saw the full pond in daylight, he stood beside it for a long time. Mara joined him. You're minimizing it quietly. I'm trying something new. How does it feel? Terrible. He took her hand. Can I help you with the shed wall? He asked. You waited almost a minute. I'm improving. Yes. The pump shed survived winter beneath its corrugated roof. In spring, Gabriel and Nora helped Mara pour a small concrete footing under the bowed wall. Dean brought salvage windows from a demolished feed room, without calling them repayment. Mara installed one above the old workbench. The dry partition became a narrow living space with a sink fed from a storage tank, a hot plate, Warren's green bowl on a shelf, and his wool blanket folded at the end of the cot. Everyone except Mara began calling it the pump keeper's cottage. Denise inspected it before allowing Mara to leave the room above Sud's spin. This is a shed, she said. It has curtains. One curtain, the other is on order. There's a pump on the other side of that wall. It doesn't run. Excellent feature in a pump house. Mara handed her the decorative kettle, now connected to a long orange extension cord from a small service panel. Denise switched it on. When it began to heat, she nodded reluctantly. I'll permit it. You don't have authority. Then why did you invite me? Mara had no answer that did not sound sentimental. She kept 3 shifts a week at the motel, while the Marsh income grew slowly. The Holt fee paid the taxes and regular maintenance. Mara collected seed from native grasses on the higher ground, and sold clean batches to 2 nearby farms restoring drainage strips. Nora leased a sunny patch beside the east track for herbs. Paying partly in cash and partly in meals, Mara no longer had to eat alone. No single payment rescued her. The work accumulated until, one month, she noticed the envelope behind the oatmeal contained more than the next repair required. Holt Farm's second season under the agreement produced a strong onion crop, and the best lower beans in 6 years. The extra payment allowed Mara to replace the rotted pump room floor. Gabriel argued that she should also replace her pickup. "The truck starts," she said, "after negotiation. It respects process." He bought her a new battery for her birthday, then asked permission to install it. She kissed him before answering. The next family supper was held on folding tables outside Dean's barn, because nobody suggested squeezing into Warren's dining room again. Dean cooked the brisket himself. It was dry around the edges and better than Mara expected. Paige brought bean salad from a grocery store, tasted Mara's, and admitted hers was wrong. Russell used Warren's pocket knife to open a sack of charcoal, cutting away from his thumb. Conversation remained safe until Aunt Celia praised the green Holt fields visible beyond the trees. Paige looked toward the marsh. Grandpa gave Mara the only parcel with dependable water. The rest of us got dust and drainage problems. The table quieted. A year earlier, Mara would have heard accusation and prepared a defense. Now she watched Paige wait to see whether the joke landed. "Warren gave all of us land with needs attached," Mara said. "I'm just the one who stayed long enough to learn mine." Dean looked down at his plate. Russell lifted his glass. "To learning what you accidentally own." It was a joke. This time, Mara laughed. Near dusk, she left the supper and walked the lower lane. The hayfield grass stood thick over the place where Dean's trench had been. Paige's shallow channels curved through her acreage instead of cutting straight down the slope. Water from an afternoon shower entered the marsh slowly, carrying no visible soil. At the gate, Mara opened Warren's oldest notebook. The pages were warped, stained, and soft at the edges. Beside his drawing of the system, she had added her own lines in darker ink. The repaired bank, the widened overflow, the 3 field dividers on Holt Farm. Water moved cleanly beneath the gate toward the onion fields. Gabriel waited on the far bank with 2 mugs of coffee. He did not call her over. He knew she would come when she finished. Mara closed the notebook and rested one hand on the wheel. The marsh was not hidden wealth. It still flooded her boots, demanded money, bred mosquitoes, and broke things in the rain. Its value existed because people showed up, cleared what was choking it, and kept faith on both sides of the boundary. She turned the wheel half an inch. The current strengthened, moving where it was needed, because she had learned when to hold it and when to let it go.